The luxurious mansion was lost in a foggy haze. It was the perfect night to lose your life under the wheels of a car. The question of how it all began was frozen in his green eyes. What ended here is in blood. The face of the spectator who came closer, distorted with horror, did not explain anything. She herself exclaimed, "Why did you knock her down? Because if her sister dies, there will be no one to compose new compositions for them." Her interlocutor replied that it was time for them to leave, otherwise they might get into trouble. In her last moments, the girl, covered in blood, looked at her killers, her younger sister and brother. Then another man approached. "Wow," said the one who was her husband. "Forgive me, Ariana," he said, standing over the dying woman, adding that once he might have truly loved her. Even then, Ariana seemed incredibly boring to him. Now he could hug the one who was more flirtatious and interesting. The faces of both sisters were almost identical, and Ariana's husband believed that her sister was full of deceit. And now let her ask for forgiveness. There was no sincerity in this. She simply wanted to announce that she was pregnant from Ariana's husband, but Ariana considered these people her family. The brother noticed that Ariana was losing a lot of blood. He even asked if she was okay, but he was only concerned about the possibility of taking fingerprints. This is what he did in her last moments of life. Then the brother thanked Ariana with a mocking smile, assuring her that her property would be in safe hands. Ariana was betrayed by absolutely everyone. Her brother promised to play the requiem she had composed at her funeral. Ariana begged with all her might that she just needed one more time. She wanted one more chance. With this thought, she closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she could not help but cry out. The plate of fruit was torn from her hands and fell to the floor, shattering into pieces. The maid rushed to her aid, worried that her mistress might be hurt. Ariana couldn't remember why she was preparing all this. She even asked the maid Sophie, and she explained that today they were going to have tea with the Marquis of Pettigrew. That was the name of Ariana's husband. Only the maid spoke as if the wedding had not yet taken place, but she was touched that Ariana was already calling him her husband. She said that the Marquis was already in the garden, and the lady could go to him, but Ariana remembered that she and Lucas had been married for 5 years. Besides, these memories were so realistic. Thinking about this, Ariana went out into the garden. She thought it might just be a dream, but then she noticed the decorations in the garden, which were popular 5 years ago. Perhaps these were deathbed hallucinations. "Enough, stop it," came from somewhere in the garden. A female voice assured that she was not in the mood today. The girl said that she heard that the wedding date had already been set, and she was terribly upset about it. But the man asked Elena not to worry, because this meant that from now on, they would live under the same roof. Ariana didn't know if it was a dream or not, but now she understood that the relationship between these two began even before the wedding. It turns out this hypocrisy has been going on for so long. At that moment, Ariana was called out. It was her brother. He wanted to know where she was. He told the girl to come to his room after tea. Maybe she forgot about it, but they had a lesson today. Count Lopez's family was famous for its musical talents. However, Edward did not inherit it, and now he angrily asked Ariana why she was silent. He had once suggested holding joint lessons, in which he allegedly corrected his sister's compositions. In fact, he simply stole them, and they were all performed at the Lopez family opera house, built by his maternal grandfather. The younger sister Elena sang. Ariana watched everything from the audience. She was aware of the situation, but she was not against living for them. She asked her brother what date it was today. It was the 27th of November, 325. It was the year when there were still 5 years left before Ariana's death. Now she has a great opportunity to take revenge on them all and protect her music. Ariana told her brother that she suddenly had a great idea for a composition and suggested that they listen. She decided that this time, she would be the one to throw everyone into the abyss. The brother agreed, although he said that he did not think it would be good for him. He said that Ariana didn't know anything about music yet, and the girl was going to play a melody that came to her mind when she was dying from blood loss. She said that her brother was right and that she was a complete zero compared to him. The brother was glad that she realized this, because this was her only plus. He told her to play lively, to listen to what kind of inspiration had suddenly come over her. Ariana tried to remember what kind of music she preferred at that time. But even more important was to understand what she should do with the family she loved. Will she have enough willpower to take revenge on them? She played a melody and everyone in the mansion heard it. These were the sounds that made everyone freeze and turn around. Ariana continued to play. "Lady, that was wonderful," exclaimed the maid. She assured that it was the best performance she had ever heard. The Marquis asked what Ariana had just played. He came from the garden, bringing leaves with him. Ariana replied that it was impromptu. Elena also said that her sister's composition turned out great, and Ariana noted that Elena's voice would suit this song well. But Elena replied that her vocal range was a bit low for such high notes. Ariana laughed and expressed regret, then said that she had just come up with the perfect name. "This will be the aria of adultery." Elena asked if such a name was too vulgar. Ariana asked if she really thought it would be too much, and Elena was sure of it. But Ariana replied that she thought it would be just right. Elena asked what her sister meant by that, and Ariana replied that the name was best precisely because it was vulgar. Ariana noted that throughout history it was passions that had captivated human hearts, but this did not convince Elena that it was possible to give the work such a title. "My brother said he liked the idea too. He thought Ariana was right, it would definitely create a buzz, but Elena said to hell with the buzz if the name was too weird. The brother suggested giving him a chance after all. Ariana said that no one can sing this aria except Elena. It took Elena a while to come up with an answer. Ariana left her and asked if she could go upstairs right now to continue her work. For right now, she felt that she could write it, from the overture to the final aria. True, all of it, the brother clarified with anticipation, and ordered that when he finished, she bring it to him so that he could improve it. The Marquis, who overheard their conversation, said that this time Ariana would take responsibility for the opera from beginning to end. The girl promised to do everything in her power to write it. She thought that this time she would not allow her compositions to be taken away. Elena indignantly asked whether the Marquis was really going to stage an opera with such scandalous content. He replied that this performance was very important. After all, Dante Heisenberg has returned to the capital, and to greet him, a grand performance will be held at the Paradise Palace. So they had to not let them steal all the glory. This performance was supposed to be a sensation. Ariana thought about Dante Heisenberg. Suddenly, this man was her chance. She asked if Dante was really returning to the capital. The Marquis noticed that this time there was a trail of blood behind him. They say he just defeated some barbarians. The Marquis looked at Elena and remarked that his future sister-in-law would be better off staying away from such a man. Elena replied that she knew, because they said his life was so decadent, as if he invited singers into his bedroom every night. The Paradise was actually a cabaret, while the Lopez Opera House was a place for the refined entertainment of the nobility. The Paradise was a place of entertainment for commoners to drink and watch performances, a place that became a refuge for the most fallen. And Dante Heisenberg was the master of paradise and a war hero whose hands were covered in blood up to the elbows. He once asked Ariana why she was wasting her talent, enriching those who did not understand how valuable her gift was. He suggested that the girl stop being stupid and go with him, because only she would be able to cut her talent like a precious stone. Dante was the only one who noticed that Ariana's family was exploiting her abilities. She was supposed to meet him. This thought brought Ariana to Paradise. It was the first time she had looked at this refuge for the fallen. She was immediately noticed and asked who she was looking for here. Dante's adjutant approached her. Ariana introduced herself and asked if she could see his lordship. The young man hesitated, because unfortunately his lordship does not meet with anyone without an appointment. Ariana asked him to tell her that she was only asking for 5 minutes of his time. If she fails to interest him during this time, she will compensate for it. Okay, said the Duke. He noticed that the lady was begging him for 5 minutes. Nice to meet you, Your Highness, said Ariana. She said that she had come to offer him something. Dante said that they could end the conversation there because he didn't think there was anything she could offer him. But Ariana had one thing with her. She asked for a moment to explain everything. Dante looked skeptically at the kalimba in the girl's hands. Ariana started playing the melody. The very first notes made Dante freeze. The melody of the kalimba enveloped the hall. The sounds flowed freely from Ariana's fingers. The girl concentrated on the game. Finally, she opened her eyes. Wasn't that good enough? 5 billion cardins. The Duke ordered the melody to be given to him on condition that all parts were present. Ariana thought that 5 billion for a piece of music was an incredibly generous offer, but she thanked the Duke out loud because it was not the price she wanted. She had completely different ambitions. She was going to become the Duke's wife. Dante didn't expect this. Having blurted out her proposal, Ariana froze. The Duke asked if she was going to exchange a piece of music for the place of his wife. Ariana noted that if he ever listened to music at Lopez's house, she wrote all of those compositions. Dante remarked that he had always believed that the Count had written them all. "That's not true," Ariana replied. "She wrote all the music, and her brother only made minor changes to it." "Ha, okay, to be honest," exclaimed the Duke. The offer seemed tempting to him, and the interlocutor interesting. Ariana added that she wanted to take all her compositions from her brother, but the laws of the Empire prevented her. According to this law, an unmarried woman cannot own private property, including copyright. Dante realized that the girl wanted to use him as a shield before the law to prevent her music from being taken away in favor of her brother. He understood everything correctly. "Just for 1 year," Ariana said, "until she finds a way to protect her music and complete her revenge. If Dante takes her as his wife, she will become the exclusive composer of Paradise." The Duke remarked that his wife's place was worth more than $5 billion. Ariana reminded him that he was now looking for an excuse to avoid the princess's proposal. He could use Ariana as a future wife. It's a simple, elegant excuse to refuse the princess. She also won't ask for anything, and he won't have to satisfy her material needs. Dante said that you shouldn't hide your cards when you play with him. To protect the music from her brother, Ariana needed legal protection, but the Duke wanted to know if she needed anything else. She had one more request. She asked Dante to pretend that he really loved her. The Duke laughed and said he liked Ariana Lopez's boldness, although the girl had not yet told him her name. But the last condition did not suit him. He won't pretend. A poor imitation is worse than nothing, even for a temporary deal. As long as Ariana takes his place as his wife, she will have to play her role sincerely. He asked her how she felt about such a proposal. If she didn't agree, she could still run away. This man was trying to scare Ariana, but she couldn't back down now. She said that she was fine with this proposal. The Duke looked into her eyes and almost hugged her. "Relax, Ariana," he said, pulling her closer. He thought that she did not suit the role of prey about to be eaten. "I'm relaxed," the girl said. Their eyes met. The Duke let her go, saying that she had a backbone. As he left, he promised to discuss all the details soon. Ariana was left perplexed. Dante remained with his adjutant. He asked him why he pretended not to know the lady. After all, he even visited the opera house. Dante told his adjutant to shut up. He was just going to the opera to have fun. But it was a 2-hour performance. Ariana Lopez wanted to pretend she didn't know the Duke, although she might have actually forgotten him. Dante himself did not know which of these options was more outrageous for him. Ariana returned home. Now it was time to catch my breath. This man sucked out all her energy in just one meeting. And she was going to become his wife, and now she didn't know if it would be a good idea. Dante was the man Lucas envied the most, and the man Elena desired the most. So Ariana needs this person. But towards the end of the meeting, she really did get nervous. If she hadn't known his secret, she would have been much more scared. Ariana was met by an excited maid. She reported that Marquis Peregrine was already here. He had been sitting in the living room for about 2 hours. It was strange what he could be doing here without his bride. Well, she'll change her clothes and ask. Elena appeared, and the maid told her that there was a gift for her. Elena was delighted that her admirer sent her jewelry from Pierre. Then she noticed Ariana. Elena asked where her sister had gone since the Marquis had almost wasted his time. She had been gone for so long. But she didn't have to worry because Elena had taken care to entertain the guest. Ariana thanked her, but she advised Elena to be more careful next time. Elena asked why. Ariana reminded that an unmarried girl should not spend too much time with her sister's fiancé, as rumors may start. Elena asked not to say such things because they simply spent time together as members of the same family. After all, the Marquis greatly appreciates Elena's talent, even comparing it to a lovely gem. No one understands the artistic nature like the Marquis. She asked Ariana to accept it even if she didn't like it, and Ariana remembered that she always said something like that. It was as if there was a special relationship between her and Lucas that Ariana couldn't understand, not an affair between a man and a woman, but a more elevated, creative connection. Artistic nature, said Ariana. She asked if Elena had learned all the different tempos. But she knew that it was a miracle that her sister had even learned the notes with her brains. Ha! Said Elena. She hurried to leave. Since her sister was not in the mood today, she would go down first so that Ariana could change and rest on the sofa. Ariana had no idea what Elena and Lucas were doing on that couch. Ariana was left alone in the room. She came closer to that very sofa. Her attention was drawn to two hairs that remained on the pillow. Red and light hairs intertwined. It was really funny. Ariana went down to the living room, where Elena's singing could already be heard. She noticed that her sister was a little out of tune, but Elena thought she was being teased. After that, Ariana greeted the guest. The Marquise asked why he had to wait for her for so long, and she responded by offering to share good news. Ariana reported that Elena seemed to have a lover and showed a hair that she found in the boudoir. Elena and the Marquise became alarmed. Ariana noticed that the Marquise had the same hair color. Then she asked if it belonged to him. Perhaps the Marquis entered her boudoir. "Yes, that's right," Lucas exclaimed. He explained that he was so bored waiting for her that he went in to look at his fiancé's wardrobe. He didn't see anything surprising in this. Why shouldn't he take an interest in his future wife's wardrobe? Ariana, he said, was so spontaneous. And since their wedding was coming up soon, he had to get her a lovely dress, and some jewelry wouldn't hurt either. Ariana realized that he was obviously trying to distract her by talking about dresses and jewelry. She asked out loud if this was true. Lucas replied that his future wife deserved such a gift. The butler came up and announced that a messenger from Master Pierre had arrived. Ariana pretended to be surprised. Then she turned to Lucas and assumed that he had called the repairman for her. "I'm so happy," Ariana told Lucas. She seemed not to notice that Elena had become gloomier than a thundercloud. In the box that the master brought there was a set of shining jewelry. The master was very glad to please the lady. He showed how carefully they had engraved the initials the customer had requested. Ariana guessed whose initials would be there. They most likely belonged to Elena, not Ariana Lopez. The girl was glad out loud that the decoration had her initials on it, and she said that she was touched by how the Marquis had managed to prepare everything. Lucas was surprised by Ariana's smile. Her beautiful but usually sad face looked completely different with such a bright smile. He said that he prepared all this for her sake, because when she is happy, he is happy too. Ariana noticed the earrings and bracelet. The master said that they would look great together. The master noticed that the lady had excellent taste. These decorations were usually bought as a set, and Ariana happily thanked the Marquis for such a gift. Lucas assured that this was a gesture of his sincerity towards Ariana. He was afraid to imagine how much all this would cost him. "I have to go," Elena said. She was going to take singing lessons. When the door slammed, Lucas thought that it was not easy to satisfy the desires of two women at once, but he could give Elena another necklace. Ariana understood what was going on in the hearts of these two. The girl looked at the jewelry and felt very strange. She could not even dream of such luxurious things when she was the Marchioness of Pettigrew. Lucas was very stingy, even in matters such as wages for servants. Ariana asked Wilhelm, the butler, how much the set could be sold for, and he said 50 million cadens. Ariana ordered everything to be sold, and Wilhelm was surprised that she would do this with the Marquise's gift. The girl asked to keep it a secret, and also to find a good informant guild for her. Ariana herself went to the city. She had important business. At the building she entered, a young man said that the owner was away today, so they were closed. Then he recognized the visitor. He didn't think he would meet her here. Therefore, he hastened to hide his face under the hood. Ariana said she wanted to make a request and asked if they were working. When the young man spoke again, she noticed that his voice had changed. The young man stated that his name was Leonard and that he was the owner of this guild, since which family actually ruled here was supposed to remain a secret from Lady Lopez. Ariana said she wants proof of her fiancé's infidelity. This request shocked the interlocutor. She replied that her fiancé was cheating on her with her younger sister, and she wanted to catch them doing it and break off the engagement. She didn't understand why this man was so surprised. Love triangles are the main source of income for information guilds, and they don't surprise anyone. Ariana said that her fiancé and sister are not shy about meeting in the garden or in her boudoir, so it should not be difficult to catch them. She also heard that this guild actively uses cameras. At this time, photography was still a recent invention, but it would become increasingly popular in the coming years. But many people believe that it is dangerous to take pictures and try to avoid cameras because they say that the soul can get trapped in a photo. This was to Ariana's advantage because Elena and Lucas could not even imagine that their shameful deeds would end up in a photo. Ariana asked to take a photo of them together over the course of 2 weeks. She wants to have time to break off this engagement and arrange a new one within this period. The young man felt that jumping from one engagement to another so quickly was a harsh decision. He asked if the lady's new husband would be someone trustworthy after all. It was hard to imagine a better revenge on an ex than living in a new marriage and having children. But Ariana replied that nothing of the sort. She said that she would not have physical relations with her new husband. After all, her new fiancé is impotent. This discouraged her interlocutor. But he assured that her order would be completed on time. It was a very nervous meeting for him. When the visitor left, another employee asked when Sir Leo had returned. He replied that he was leaving again. He had some business to attend to. The employee reminded him that it was his job, not Sir Leo's. He did not understand why he was taking on the task. They noticed that their conversation was being watched. It was His Excellency. The interlocutors did not know that he had heard the conversation. They asked how long he had been there, and the Duke noted that he had failed to impress the woman. Now he wondered why Ariana assumed he was impotent. Leo also didn't know where Lady Lopez could get such thoughts from. She did say she wasn't nervous. He thought she was a cheeky woman who thought she couldn't hurt him. It was a complete upset, how dare she. Ariana was walking down the street at this time thinking, it's time to get down to real business. She had 3 main goals. She had already visited the Informants Guild. Then you'll need to talk to Dante about the marriage contract and the search for a suitable soprano. Finding a soprano was key. Ariana will completely destroy the Lopez Opera House and her family. They won't have a chance to recover. The instrument of her revenge will be the music she writes. But the quality of the music doesn't matter if no one hears it, and it must be said that Elena was a great performer. 5 years later, she would become the best in the empire. Except for one person. Ariana had an idea where to find this man. She hoped she was right. Suddenly, she heard some sounds. Someone was crying with such a beautiful voice. Ariana decided to take a look. Even if it was just crying, the volume and resonance are impressive. At this time, Elena had a favorite hobby. She loved to trample the hopes of aspiring singers. Elena said that if Rosalina's singing was considered good, then even a dove could become an excellent vocalist. That her hair looks like a dried rose. This was the exact color of the crying girl's hair. Ariana asked if she was okay because if she sat like that she would catch a cold. Ariana wrapped the girl in her cloak. The girl said that the lady was so kind, she promised to repay for this care. Ariana looked at what Rosalina looked like at that age. She asked what the girl was doing here. Rosalina replied that she had always dreamed of becoming a singer. One day she got the opportunity to achieve this. She received an offer to perform a song at Paradise, which is owned by Duke Heisenberg. It was a happy night. And Rosalina met the most famous singer of our time, who came up to her and asked if her companion was her lover. The singer said that Rosalina's boyfriend is a pretty good musician, but it's a pity that his voice spoils his performance. Rosalina didn't hear anything good for herself, but she didn't pay any attention to these words. But she thought that she would have time to properly prepare for the performance. However, her lover suddenly disappeared. He left only a letter in which he said that he had met his true love. After hearing Rosalina's story, Ariana thought that it was probably Elena's doing. Rosalina said that she had been looking for a musician, but no one wanted to play for an amateur like her. It was so unfair that she would have to miss out on such an opportunity, but there was nothing she could do about it. Ariana extended her hand and asked when. Rosalina wondered who this lady was. She had such beautiful hair. Ariana asked what time the performance was scheduled at Paradise. Rosalina said from 4 to 5. There is not much time left. Get up, we have to go on stage, Ariana said. She told the girl to warm up and sing, and she would take care of the rest herself. She will accompany her. Rosalyn just needs to sing. But she was going to perform a rather difficult aria, On Possession. Ariana noted that it was a melody with many intricacies. Rosalina was worried that she shouldn't have said this because the wonderful stranger might run away because she was afraid of something too complicated. But she could also back down and sing some children's song if she could do it on stage. She assured that any other song would do. Ariana replied that they would go with the first option. The aria of Possession brought the first full house to the Lopez Opera House, the leading aria. The accompaniment was complex due to the change in key, which symbolized the emotional state of the heroine. Rosalina was surprised that the stranger was satisfied with the song. Ariana said that she wrote this piece herself, so they ended up in Paradise. Ariana looked around. This is what Paradise was like at that time. The stage is in a terrible state. This was to be expected, since Paradise was not officially a concert hall. What was surprising was that 5 years later, it would be he who would shake the entire empire. There were rumors that Dante had no intention of cherishing Paradise. His interest was not in performances or opera, but in music itself. In any case, they will not be able to perform in such an environment. Ariana turned to the maid. She said she would like to change the scene. After all, this one was too close to the audience and the reflector was not where it should be. And if you look at the stage, the light was falling in a completely inappropriate way. Everything was arranged completely inconveniently for both the singer and the audience. It was disadvantageous to everyone. Everyone was surprised by the unknown lady's ardor. Was she really planning to accompany them today? And the singer turned out to be an inconspicuous village girl. For some reason, her nose was red like a tomato, but it didn't matter. If her level was too low, she would simply be interrupted halfway. The audience whispered about the performance of the new singer. Nobody had ever heard of her before, and now everyone assumed that it was just some kind of dummy. Rosalina walked onto the stage full of determination. Finally, she got a chance to show her talent. She had to cope, and she would do everything in her power. With the help of her benefactress, she will cope. Ariana looked at Rosalina, and then she started playing a melody. Everything was clear from the very first notes. This lady's performance was special. Now Rosalyn also had to not make a mistake. Rosalina pressed her hand to her chest and began to sing. "Your look and your breath, I want them to be mine." These were the words of the aria on possession. It was the story of a great seductress. She accidentally ended up in a temple and fell in love with a priest. She realized the true desire to possess, which neither jewels nor handsome young men can arouse. And so she rejoices, declaring to everyone that she wants to possess his whole life, even if it dims its shine. "I want you so much, why can't we be together?" sang Rosalina. The audience was amazed by the singing, but even more by the playing of the accompanist. More and more people took their places near the stage. Rosalina thought the next line was very important. It talks about how the heroine fully understands her feverish first love. "If only you could be mine," sang Rosalina. At that moment, something happened to her throat. It could have been because she had been sitting in the cold for so long. She didn't know what to do, because she would have to hit a very high note now. When the accompaniment fades, everyone will hear her voice break. But suddenly, Rosalina heard Ariana exclude that line from the song. She turned to her benefactress, who winked at her. Ariana bought herself some time, and her playing was so beautiful, it was impossible to believe that one could improvise so easily. Rosalina thought she could. She must sing for the sake of her benefactress. "I will never regret it, only I will be on your side," sang Rosalina. Then she froze, looking at the audience. There was applause. Rosalina was happy. Ariana also looked at her with joy. The audience said that this singer is simply mesmerizing. She has an amazing voice. She can hit such high notes as the outstanding vocalist Elena Lopez. Some doubted that On Possession had always sounded like this, but the long passage was so harmonious, as if it had always been there. Everyone became curious about who was accompanying them, but the person's face was hidden by a hood. "Mr. Lopez, that's who it could be." Rosalina thought that her benefactress was saying that she had written this aria. Then it turns out that she was Mr. Edward Lopez. Ariana said her real name with a smile. Another person approached the girl. Ariana recognized him. It was Dante. He also identified the girl and said that she had caught inspiration. He asked if she had used his establishment to promote a new singer. It was true. Ariana wanted to give her some kind of reputation if she had to pit her against Elena in a soprano battle anytime soon. Ariana asked the Duke for forgiveness if he was offended by their performance without his permission. But Dante said she could use everything he had, because he was also going to use her to the fullest. Rosalina was shocked. It was the Duke himself. It was unclear what was happening. Dante whispered to Ariana that it wasn't all that bad. The girl felt as if she was about to be eaten, but it must have been another test. She said out loud that she wasn't scared at all. Dante noticed that she was a tough nut to crack, and he would like to make her pay for this insolence. But they were still engaged, so it was possible to put everything off until the wedding. At this time, in another place, Edward sat at the card table. He said he had a good feeling and went all in. Elias Reiner, an investor in the Lopez Opera House, distracted him. He called him to another part of the salon. Tomorrow was the first rehearsal of the opera for the San Verdito Festival. Reiner suggested that Edward shouldn't be in the salon at such a late hour. Edward thought that Reiner was acting so arrogant and bossy just because he was an investor. He could have fun because he had finished the composition. Now it was up to the musicians. Reiner replied that after hearing the reimagining of the aria on Possession, he was looking forward to the performance. Edward knew nothing about the reimagining, but Reiner assured him that it sounded even better than the original. "I'm sorry," Edward said. Reiner said the original was magnificent, but he always thought the flute part in the last movement was a bit superfluous. In the new version, this part was removed and replaced with an extended interlude. This outraged Edward because he was the author of the flute part, which was now called superfluous. But one could not be outraged by Reiner's opinion because he helped the Lopez Opera House gain success. The next morning at the mansion, Elena was reading a fresh newspaper. It said that Duke Heisenberg had openly shown interest in the mysterious woman. It was the Duke's first publicly known affair, but no one knew who the lady was. Elena choked with rage. How could the Duke flirt not with a princess, but with some tramp? If so, then there was something unclear. Elena saw it from the stage during the performance. The Duke was here again. He looked at her without taking his eyes off her. He definitely came to see Elena. She told the maid to invite the Duke to the reception. He could be Elena's partner. But he ignored her and didn't even send a refusal. This was a source of ridicule, because she said she would come with the Duke, but showed up alone. Because there is no need for such a busy person to come here with her. The maid asked the miss not to worry so much. After all, the luminary of the opera was not some unknown singer, but Ariana Lopez. Elena asked what she was talking about. The maid simply assumed that she was upset by the headline, but Elena only paid attention to it after these words. The successful debut of the singer Rosalyn tenor was written there. Rosalyn was that simple girl. Elena deceived that girl's boyfriend in order to ruin her performance, but she still made her debut. It was incredibly infuriating. Music was heard above the opera house. The musicians have already started rehearsing. It was directed by Ariana Lopez. This irritated Elena. Ariana wasn't even the lead composer, but she acted like she was the one in charge. Elena didn't understand how someone like her sister could become a marquise. But if it weren't for his status, if Elena's mother had been at least a low-class noblewoman. At that moment, a muffled groan was heard nearby. It was Edward who appeared, and looking at him, Elena asked how much her brother had drunk yesterday, and he demanded that she not make noise as it irritated him. Elena decided to make fun of him since he was feeling so bad. She said she thought their little sister had changed a little, and Edward countered that he looked as pathetic and empty as ever. Elena pointed out to him how Ariana would show off as if she were the lead composer whenever Edward turned away for a minute. "What?" Edward asked. Elena asked if he had strengthened the cello part, since his brother had written this piece, only he could rework it. But the musicians were so obedient to Ariana. Edward was furious. Ariana was completely absorbed in music. Edward pushed her away roughly. The girl fell to the floor. Edward shouted that Ariana didn't understand anything about this and didn't dare interfere. Then he asked the musicians why professionals listen to an amateur. He told them to start all over again, then again from the very beginning. Edward said the violins were out of tune. They are too loud. I'll have to trust my instincts, regardless of what this girl has scribbled. Edward shouted that everyone was fired. This piece doesn't need so many violins. At that moment, someone hit Edward on the back of the head. He collapsed unconscious. Ariana said his voice was out of tune, too loud for a drunk. Sometime before this is what happened. Among the musicians was a violinist named Ruben. His arm hurt a lot, but he couldn't stop playing. But he didn't have enough money even to repair the house, let alone go to the doctor. The violin was the only inheritance his noble mother left him. So he had to play it so that no one would realize that he was in pain. If Edward noticed, he would simply fire him. Edward showed up even more angry than ever. He told me to start over again and again. Ruben tried his best, but Edward didn't like it and demanded to play again. Starting over was an unconscionable torture. Ruben had to endure all this. It was just a small injury. He would be able to go to the doctor as soon as the show was over. But playing for a long time can make the injury worse. Edward shouted that the violins were out of tune because they were too loud, and then he fired everyone. Ruben realized that next month he would simply have nothing to live on. This simply couldn't happen. Ruben jumped up to protest, but he just didn't have time. With a sweet smile, Ariana suggested ending this pointless rehearsal. Her brother doesn't remember anything after he got drunk, so she can forget about getting fired. Ariana walked up to Ruben and asked him to show her his hand. She noticed that he had an injury to his arm. She knew this because the sound of his violin trembled slightly. Ariana gave him money so he could go to the doctor, who would prescribe medication to make it go away in a couple of days. Ariana looked at the musicians. Everyone was exhausted. Edward always took it out on the musicians like a tyrant, so they just couldn't tell him if they were hurt, because if Edward found out, he would just fire them. It was unacceptable that skilled musicians were being bullied like this. Ariana couldn't ignore it any longer. She asked if they were happy with the way they were treated at the opera house. The musicians exchanged glances. Ariana modestly admitted that in fact all the achievements of the Lopez Opera House were only her merit. The musicians didn't understand what she was talking about. Ariana explained that the Milady aria that everyone knew was an arranged version. And then she showed the original. Everyone was shocked by the sound. It was an order of magnitude better. Incredible emotions were conveyed through music. Ruben realized that she was the true composer of the House of Lopez. Ariana offered the musicians a new job. In an orchestra that she will conduct herself, not her brother. The musicians must not have trusted her yet, so she had to convince them, and she offered a salary much better than what they were getting now. Luis, the conductor of the Lopez Orchestra, immediately said that he wanted to join Ariana's orchestra. Ruben said that he wanted it too and asked to take it. Many people also wanted to play Miss Ariana's music. It was a victory, but I had to think about Edward. The musicians said they would take care of the Count. They will do everything as it should be. The lady cannot worry about the consequences and just move forward. Ariana was happy to provide it to them. All the musicians signed contracts with her. She was glad that she was able to assemble the orchestra as planned. She also received a letter from the York Guild of Informants. Red meant the request was completed. Now Ariana could see what kind of photo they had taken. The footage was quite explicit. Lucas's betrayal was proven. Elena was also recognizable. There were so many of these photos. The York Guild executor did an impressive job, but it's likely that the two weren't particularly discreet. The guildman reported that they had learned something else. Elena Lopez visits the pharmacist. Women who meet unsuitable men often visit pharmacists. In her past life, Elena was pregnant with Lucas's child. She must be buying contraceptives now. The prescription could serve as proof. The man from the guild objected that it was just the opposite. Elena Lopez was prescribed a fertility drug. This surprised Ariana. The girl thought about this as she walked down the dark street. Elena was trying to get pregnant. She planned it all from the beginning. Her lies, Lucas' seduction, right up until she was pregnant with his child. Ariana thought that a family capable of murder could do something else. "It seems my fiancé likes night walks," a voice nearby said. It was Dante, holding a stranger by the collar. When Ariana asked who it was, the Duke threw the stranger away. He said that Ariana didn't notice that she was being followed. This man was following her. She had no idea. The Duke dealt with him easily. Dante noted that it was obvious to everyone that such a rich lady would be an attractive target, especially when she has connections with such an influential person. He was right. Ariana completely forgot about caution. She asked for forgiveness. She won't make that mistake again. Dante asked why she was crying. Ariana didn't cry. Dante was wrong. She was just a little tired. Preparing for the wedding takes more energy than expected. Dante agreed that it was very difficult when you had not one but two suitors. He wanted to know when Ariana was going to get rid of the excess. She planned to complete all the preparations for her wedding with Lucas Pettigrew on schedule and leave him at the altar on the day of the ceremony. Dante suggested doing something even crazier. For example, he could ruin the wedding by declaring that he objects. Or maybe grab her wrist and kiss it in front of everyone. Why doesn't Ariana be a little more honest? She was scared to go to this wedding alone. Dante said that she couldn't be sure that she would get out of this situation unharmed. To be honest, Ariana was scared. She didn't know what Lucas was capable of in a fit of anger. But she could not ask his lordship to come to the wedding. She thanked Dante and assured him that she could handle it. Dante didn't argue. Another day, the girl tried on a bracelet. She admired her wrist thoughtfully. The jeweler said that rubies look even more impressive on such clean skin. He noted that not all gentlemen could afford such jewelry. Lucas stated that they would take whatever his fiancé wanted, and it should be noted that their show was fully booked. To show off the latter was the most obvious reason for such sudden generosity. Ariana hadn't really slept last night. She was tired and now she just wanted to go home. Lucas, looking at her, decided that she was touched, but her eyes were just watering from the fact that she kept yawning. Lucas thought that Ariana's touched expression was quite cute. He announced that once they were married, his Marchioness would have dozens of such trinkets. Lucas laughed. Yes, the decoration was expensive, but it was worth it. Besides, his wallet will soon be full again. He made no mistake in investing in the Lopez house. Once the show gains recognition, thanks to Ariana's work, they will take a place on the festival's main stage, and his investment will pay off 100-fold. These pleasant thoughts were interrupted by an enraged horse. Lucas was scared to death. In a panic, he pushed Ariana away. The girl fell and he started running. The horse reared up. Someone picked up Ariana. He managed to drag her away from the deadly hooves. It was Dante. He asked if the girl was hurt. Ariana asked how he did it. Dante noticed that she could not be left alone for a minute without getting into trouble. He asked if she would refuse his help now. All she needs to do is tell him that she needs him and stop trying to figure things out on her own. There was nothing to answer to this. Dante reminded her that she could use everything he had. Ariana felt her heart beat faster, but she didn't understand whether it was because of surprise or because of the man next to her. Dante held her tightly in his arms. She said that she would send him a wedding invitation. Dante smiled. He will be glad to attend. Lucas barely caught his breath after escaping. He didn't understand where this horse came from. He didn't understand where Ariana had gone. The girl was in the arms of another man. Passers-by saw how his lordship saved her life. The ladies whispered that the Duke was even more handsome in life than they imagined. It was unclear why this handsome and caring man was nicknamed the Butcher. Lucas was angry that he was humiliated because of a stupid animal. He rushed back to Ariana, exclaiming that his love must have been terribly frightened. The Duke blocked Lucas's path, overwhelming him with his height. Dante asked if the Lopez family's idea of nobility allowed them to put a woman in danger for the sake of their own skin. Lucas didn't expect ridicule. He shouted that he swears he was trying to save Ariana. He grabbed her hand. He assured that he would have saved her if not for the Duke's intervention. Suddenly, he saw that the garnet bracelet had disappeared from the girl's wrist. If it slipped when the girl fell, then such a large stone should be visible. He rushed to look for him. Luckily, the bracelet was easy to find. Dante offered to buy Lady Lopez a new bracelet. Lucas objected that his lordship had no need to give jewels to his bride. He himself would be able to buy a new one, even though deep down he was outraged that after one expensive purchase, he would have to spend money again. At that moment, an adjutant ran up to Dante and said that they needed to go right away. If they were delayed even for a minute, they would not get to the audience with Her Highness. Dante asked Ariana to notify him if the incident had harmed her in any way, and she thanked him. Dante kissed her hand goodbye and expressed his hope for a quick meeting. Lucas was angry that the Duke had just flirted with his woman. He trembled with rage, noticing the lustful glances that the Duke cast at Ariana. Lucas noticed that Ariana was indeed attractive. In fact, she was even more beautiful than Elena. Never before had he felt such a strong desire to possess Ariana. He could understand why the Duke had fallen in love with her at first sight, but to his lordship's regret, Ariana belonged to him. Lucas offered to walk Ariana home, then stay the night and visit her chambers after nightfall. To Ariana, it sounded like the horse had knocked the last of his sanity out of him. "I'm sorry," Ariana said. Her shoulder still hurt from where Lucas had pushed her when that horse had charged at them, so she would walk home alone. Lucas agreed that if she was injured, she should rest. Ariana said goodbye and left. Lucas realized that the mockery didn't make him angry, but rather made him want her even more. Ariana will belong to him forever after the wedding in 5 days. He will make her scream his name with those cute lips. And so the cherished day arrived. Ariana put on a wedding dress. Sophie's maid exclaimed that she looked stunning. She was even worried that this slug Lucas would fall in love with the lady again. It was so cute that Sophie got angry. Ariana told her and the butler Wilhelm about Elena and Lucas's affair. Sophie was beside herself with indignation. Ariana explained that this is why she doesn't plan to marry him. Instead, she will marry the Duke of Heidelberg. Wilhelm didn't understand what she wanted. Ariana asked if he missed the days when the Lopez name was synonymous with musical talent. During her contract with Duke Heidelberg, she intends to restore the former glory of the Lopez name, and for this she needed help. Sophie said she would always be on her mistress's side. She was about to comb Ariana's hair, but the comb was snatched from her hands. Elena walked into the room and noticed that Ariana's pale skin made her look like a ghost in that dress. Ariana replied that her sister looked beautiful today, and her dress was so extravagant that people might think she was the bride. Elena noted that today she wanted to let her sister stand out, since today was her day. But there were only 3 days left before the show, so Elena couldn't allow herself to look completely pale. "When I was wounded by a golden arrow, I knew that I would be its eternal captive," she sang. Ariana thought that Elena liked the song now. This is the part where the heroine of the aria of the harlot not only accepts forbidden love, but also vows to make up for it. Ariana said that Elena really sings the song beautifully, but her acting still needs some work. After all, the heroine had an affair with the husband of the one who considers her a sister. This needs to be played more vulgarly. Elena was outraged by the remark. Ariana said that the current facial expression would be perfect. Elena looks like an evil seductress. Elena didn't understand what Ariana was saying, why she was even talking to her like that. The door creaked and Lucas's mother entered. The Marchioness of Pettigrew came to check out what all the noise was about. Elena took her hand and invited her to sit down. The Marquise hit her on the hand. She declared that such an ill-mannered and vulgar creature did not dare touch her. The Marquise glanced sideways at the blushing Elena. She said that she would never have learned anything from her mother. Having a commoner mother has always been Elena's greatest weakness. Not to mention that the one Elena fears most is the Marquise de Pettigrew, a lady from a respected family. Elena bowed and said that she would leave Madame Marquise immediately. She left, and the Marquise turned her attention to Ariana. She noticed that the face was the only thing that managed to be decorated otherwise. The girl looked too boring for a bride. Besides, she was so thin that she was unlikely to be able to bear a child. Ariana remembered that when she was Lucas's wife, the Marquise had tormented her more than anyone else, but this time she refused to remain silent. She said that if the seed is defective, nothing will grow in the most fertile soil. The Marchioness stated that the fact that her son was marrying someone from such a family was humiliating enough in itself, and she still had the audacity to insult Lucas in front of his mother. Ariana asked whether the Marquis considered this wedding unfair. The Marquise replied that her family would never have gotten mixed up with the likes of Lopez if it weren't for her innocent son. According to the Marquise, one could not even dream of a greater reward than this wedding, so Ariana was now obliged to serve him properly. Ariana objected that she saw no injustice in this union. Her grandfather was a renowned musician, and her mother was admired by many women for her noble character. The Marchioness reminded them that this had led to nothing after their grandfather's death. They had become more destitute than any commoners. If Lucas had not invested in the opera house, the Lopez family would never have been reborn. Ariana recalled that it was the Marchioness who gained everything thanks to the profits from her performances. She had heard that the Marquise had previously even turned to moneylenders to satisfy her extravagant desires. Ariana assumed that this would humiliate Lucas even more. The Marquise screamed that the impudent girl did not dare speak to her in such a tone, because she was only a peasant to whom their family had condescended. She wanted to hit Ariana, but the girl dodged. The Marquise could not stay on her feet. She fell, and Ariana asked innocently if everything was okay with the lady. She said that since the Marquise needed rest, she would leave her. Walking down the corridor, Ariana hoped that the Marquise would have time to wake up by the beginning of the ceremony, because she wouldn't want her to miss all the most interesting things. "My lady," a man from the Informants Guild called out to the girl. He was shocked at how amazing she looked. But right now, Ariana needed to follow him. He had just caught Lucas and Elena in the act. Ariana didn't understand what kind of crime they were talking about. It was hard to imagine them doing anything on their wedding day. And so they went into the right rooms. Lucas consoled a crying Elena. Elena complained that Ariana called her image vulgar. Elena complained to Lucas about how Ariana made fun of her dress, when all she wanted was to dress well for her sister's wedding, but Ariana felt nothing but hatred towards her. Lucas replied that his Ellie simply had too tender a heart, but she shouldn't worry so much. He would scold Ariana with all severity because she didn't dare to say offensive things about her own sister. Elena said plaintively that Lucas was the only person she could trust. Lucas leaned towards his beloved and kissed her. His hands moved on to obvious liberties, making their way under Elena's dress. This scene could easily be seen if the doors to the boudoir were slightly opened. Then Ariana closed the door. She had enough of what she had already seen. It was unbearable to look further. It looked much more disgusting than one could imagine. Her companion reminded her that they had already collected enough evidence, but he simply felt that she needed to see everything for herself. Ariana turned to him and thanked him for bringing her here. Come to think of it, she should be grateful to these two as well. Because of their behavior, she would have no regrets about what she was about to do. With these thoughts, Ariana walked away and went out onto the stairs. Her brother blocked her path, eager to find out why she was so happy. Ariana said she was just glad her entire beloved family was together. Edward thought that his sister was talking nonsense, but he had enough troubles already, for example, with the Marchioness who had suddenly lost consciousness. He asked who invited this person anyway. It seemed to him that this wedding was simply cursed. He said that since Ariana now belongs to the Pettigrew family, she should try to serve the Marquis well, because they need their power and influence so much. "Ariana," Lucas said, also descending the stairs, acting as if he had been looking for a long time and could not find her. He noticed that she looked stunningly beautiful. Ariana noticed the lipstick on Lucas's face. He didn't even bother to wipe it off. She told Lucas that his lipstick was smudged. Lucas replied that it was from the fruit he had eaten earlier. Ariana wondered if this man really loved Elena so much that he was ready to cheat on her even on his own wedding day. He loves her so much that he is willing to risk being caught just to hold her in his arms. Come to think of it, in their past life, Ariana and Lucas almost never went to bed together, because Lucas's dignity rarely worked as it should. Sometimes when they did this, he would drag Ariana into some corner of the garden where guests might pass by. There were also dark corridors through which servants could pass at any moment, and no matter how much Ariana begged him to stop, he simply told her to shut up. If you think about it, all these situations had something in common. There was always the chance of being caught off guard and in a sticky situation. It was important to Lucas to do this in places where he could be seen, or to have an affair with his wife's sister. Ariana's ex-husband was simply so impotent that he couldn't get aroused without a thrill. But one day he finally succeeded. Ariana looked at Lucas and said that it was pretty fast. Lucas asked what his fiancé was talking about, which he had to finish quickly. Ariana thought she should tell him that she meant his ridiculous and pathetic outbursts of passion. The girl said out loud that the gentleman understood perfectly well what she was talking about. But Lucas didn't understand. He was only worried about what Ariana might guess. Elena also came down to the hall, beaming, confident that, as she had planned, the Marquis belonged entirely to her alone. Today was Ariana's wedding, but Lucas still looked with such a passionate gaze only at Elena, she even felt goosebumps on her skin. And suddenly she saw a man whom she never expected to meet at this event. Duke Heigenberg, an enemy of the Emperor, was present at the wedding of Lucas, who supported His Majesty. Perhaps he also came to see Elena. Of course it was, because he came to all her shows time after time. Maybe the last time he declined her invitation because something urgent came up. Elena came closer to the Duke and greeted him, and then announced that she was the bride's younger sister. "Oh, so it's you," the Duke said indifferently. Elena beamed. He remembered her. She knew that he had come here to see her. He was an intriguing, captivating, courageous, and dangerous man. Today was the perfect opportunity for Elena to get closer to this man. The priest announced from his platform that they would now ask the groom to come out and greet him with applause. A satisfied Lucas appeared to the sound of clapping. Then it was the bride's turn to come out, and she too was greeted by all the guests. The eldest daughter of the Lopez house turned out to be much more beautiful than any of them expected. Elena realized with anger that everyone was staring at Ariana. It really pissed her off. She glanced sideways at the Duke to gauge his reaction. Dante looked at his bride gloomily. Elena did not understand why he was staring at her like that, as if he would explode at any moment. The priest asked the ritual question of whether Lucas Pettigrew vowed to love his bride from now on and forever. "I swear," Lucas said, looking straight ahead serenely. The priest then asked Ariana Lopez if she vowed to love and honor her husband Lucas from now on and forever. And Ariana also answered with a confident voice, only she said no. "Very well, then I proclaim," said the priest, but did not finish the sentence, realizing what had just been said. The guests began to make noise, discussing what Ariana had just said. It seemed the bride had said that she did not agree. Lucas assumed that his beloved Ari had simply misspoke, since she had been so nervous all day because of the wedding. But Ariana firmly assured that she was not mistaken. The priest asked if he could continue the ceremony. Lucas grabbed his bride by the elbow and said that of course they were asking her to continue. The priest said hesitantly that if anyone was against this union, he could say so now or remain silent forever. And to everyone's surprise, there was a man who wanted to intervene. It was the Duke, and he declared that he was against this union. Lucas glanced over his shoulder, startled. Dante walked resolutely towards the bride and groom. He told Ariana that he was afraid he couldn't hold back any longer. This statement stunned everyone present because no one could understand what exactly was happening. Even the Informants Guild employee had no idea that his lordship was somehow involved in Lady Ariana's plan. The clerk had previously asked the lady if she planned to release the photos and call off the wedding today. Ariana shook her head because she would call off the wedding, but the photos would be of no use. Ariana wanted Elena to sing the Temptress aria perfectly in front of everyone. She will need the photos then. The song will make a splash when the public guesses who it is about. What the clerk could not understand was why his lordship was helping Madame Ariana to the detriment of his own reputation. Lucas asked Dante what this nonsense was, since Ariana was his fiancé. Dante announced that he had decided that a guy like Lucas did not deserve the hand of Ariana Lopez. He looked at the girl and said seriously that it was time to give him his answer. "Choose me instead of this empty-headed fool," he suggested, and assured her that he would value Ariana more than anyone else. "Ariana," Lucas cried out and asked if she could seriously think about such a thing now. He was Lucas Pettigrew, the man Ariana loved with all her heart. And Ariana replied that she had made a choice, which puzzled Lucas. She came to the conclusion that she could not marry him, which she said looking into his eyes. Lucas asked, taken aback, if she meant to say she was calling off the wedding, just like that, right in the middle of the ceremony. "Yes," said Ariana, because she preferred to die alone rather than marry someone like him. She called Lucas a disgusting bastard who was having an affair with her own sister. Lucas couldn't believe she knew about this. He wanted to know how long ago. He cursed because it turned out that of all the possible days, Ariana guessed today. Lucas exclaimed that this was not true, that he could explain everything. He grabbed Ariana's hand and suggested that they talk in private. But Dante suddenly hit Lucas, knocking him off his feet. Dante told Lucas not to even dare touch Ariana with his dirty paws. "So," said the Duke, looking at the girl, he wanted to know what choice she had made, and he assumed that she had chosen him. His hand went to Ariana's waist to pull her closer to him. He said that even if it wasn't so, he would get her out of there by any means necessary. Dante said that he had decided everything the moment he first saw the girl. Ariana didn't understand if Dante's look was just a well-acted scene. The Duke leaned towards the girl and whispered that he had decided to never let her go again. With these words, he kissed Ariana in front of everyone present. The crew rolled along a narrow road. Elena sat inside, listening with a stunned look to the curses that her companion shouted. The brother cursed without stopping. He did not understand how this pathetic girl dared to do this to them. Thanks to her, the alliance with the Pettigrew family was destroyed. The guests left the failed celebration in shock. And the Marquis of Pettigrew had to be carried out on a stretcher. And now the Marquis may withdraw the investment because he is furious. It was depressing. There were only a couple of days left until the premiere. It was unclear how it was that, of all the possible people, Ariana had run away with Duke Heigenberg, and yet she was still somewhere. Could it be that Ariana has somehow regained her memory of what happened more than 10 years ago? Finally, the carriage stopped at the porch of the mansion. The brother got out and shouted to Elena to also get out of the carriage without delay. "It's pointless," she replied. "No one like Ariana could become the Duke's bride." The opera was scheduled to take place in 3 days. If this performance was a failure, they would not be able to take part in the founding festival. Elena looked absolutely terrible, as if she had no idea that she would be singing on stage in just a couple of days. She asked if her brother was serious about not going, despite the ongoing fiasco. But it was important to say that Ariana's presence or absence does not in any way affect the performances of the Lopez Opera House, and when Ariana returns, her brother will catch her and force her to marry the Marquis, even if he has to beat her half to death. Ariana was home and she said, "Welcome home, dear brother," as if nothing had happened. "You!" cried Elena and her brother, not finding any suitable words. Ariana smiled as she looked at them. The brother shouted that Ariana was a pathetic girl who didn't understand what she had done today. He asked how she dared to show up home with that insolent smile after such a scandal. Ariana replied that this was the very reason she was packing her things. She intended to leave this house forever. She saw no reason to be surprised, since she could no longer live in this house after marriage. The brother asked her if she meant to say that she really intended to marry the Duke. She didn't dare say that, so he swung and hit her. This little boor simply didn't dare say such things, didn't dare act like that. Ariana used to be so scared when Edward got angry like that. He made the girl feel as if her drunkard father had suddenly come back to life. But now Ariana could clearly see that he just looked completely ridiculous. Seeing his sister's smirk, Edward frowned. He raised his hand to slap her and demanded that she immediately remove that insolent smile from her face. But Ariana wasn't going to take it lying down and responded to her brother by kicking him in the shin. Edward fell with a groan, clutching his leg to the screams of a frightened Elena, while Ariana looked on, remembering the words of her grandfather, which he often repeated during her childhood. The older man always taught her to aim for the shin when striking, not the groin, even when dealing with men. As it turned out, he was right. Ariana told her brother that she was not going to marry Lucas while he was still yelling at her for hitting her and being rude. The girl asked if Edward hadn't been curious about why she had decided to call off the wedding so abruptly. The man, who had gotten up from the floor and was very irritated, indignantly agreed to listen to his sister. Ariana revealed that Lucas cheated on her. She added that it happened right on the day of their wedding. When Elena heard these words, her eye twitched, and Ariana finished her story with none other than her own sister. Elena exclaimed that Ariana had simply gone completely crazy. Elena cried out that Ariana believed that she was having an affair with her son-in-law, but she did not dare accuse her of such indecency. It was only at this moment that Edward learned that Lucas had been having an affair with Elena. He couldn't say that he didn't expect this from them. He saw how this stupid girl tried to flirt with his sister's fiancé several times, and it was obvious that Lucas enjoyed her attention. Now Elena screamed in rage that her sister did not dare try to ruin her reputation like this, portraying her as a woman of easy virtue. She rushed to her brother, calling on him to stand up for her. According to Elena, Ariana was setting her up to cover up what she had done, and Edward said that he understood everything. The sound of the impact was very loud. Elena turned away from him. "Come to think of it, I don't remember ever hitting you," Edward said to Elena. The girl trembled in fear, looking at her brother. Edward demanded that she apologize to her sister that very second, which made Elena angry because she believed that she had nothing to apologize for. She was not guilty of anything. Ariana watched this family scene and thought that the slap was a big surprise for Elena. And this was natural, considering that neither her father nor Edward had ever beaten her before, because Ariana always stood up for her sister and took the full brunt of the punishment upon herself. Although she strongly doubted that Elena had ever thought about this, now Elena was outraged that Edward could say such a thing to her. Edward hit her again, angry at her behavior. He ordered her to immediately kneel down and beg Ariana for forgiveness. Elena couldn't believe that Edward demanded that she do this. Edward replied that if his sister was accusing Elena of something like that, she could at least pretend to repent and not be insolent in response. Elena asked for forgiveness with a laugh, but Edward was not looking at her but at Ariana. He understood that since Ariana had caught her sister with Lucas, this was a worthy reason for leaving, and now he needed to calm the indignant girl down. Edward thought that Ariana had always been a softie, so now he just needed to make Elena ask for forgiveness, even on her knees. "Thank you for this cheap farce," Ariana said. With a smile, she announced to her brother and sister that, unfortunately, their audience was coming to an end. Not paying any more attention to her shocked relatives, the girl headed towards the exit to slam the door behind her forever. Belatedly, Edward rushed after her, calling her name. He was surprised to see a hand with a sword block his path. "Who the hell are you?" Edward asked the man who had blocked his path. The stranger replied that he had orders from his lordship to protect Lady Ariana from anyone who wished to harm her. Meanwhile, Ariana went to a completely different mansion sparkling in the twilight. The door creaked and Ariana entered, thinking that this was the Duke's dwelling. She was told that he himself would be here, but the girl could not find him anywhere. Suddenly, Ariana's attention was drawn to a sudden sound. It was the Duke who appeared before the girl. Ariana thought that she had never seen him in simple clothes before, so he seemed a bit of a stranger to her. Dante's gaze fell on Ariana's face. "What happened to you?" he asked, and the girl did not immediately understand what he meant. He took her chin in his hand to examine the mark from Edward's slap more closely. Ariana hadn't thought it was that noticeable. Dante stated that he despised any damage to his property, especially when it came to his woman. Ariana wondered with embarrassment if the Duke was worried about her, but decided that no, most likely it could just somehow affect his reputation. Ariana quickly apologized and assured the Duke that it would not happen again. Dante looked at her and said that this did not answer the question he asked her. Dante said he doubted it was Ariana's sister. He suspected it was her brother. Dante remembered his name was Edward Lopez. Now he was going to make him pay somehow. Ariana felt a cold sweat break out on her skin from the Duke's intense gaze, and her voice stuttered as she tried to explain that she had kicked the offender in the shin. Dante grinned openly. He asked if this blow had satisfied Ariana's thirst for revenge, but the girl replied that it was only the beginning. She had to admit, however, that the Duke had made the day much better, and she thanked him with a smile. Dante replied that he was glad she liked it. He touched her face and said that it was nice to know that he was giving her pleasure. Ariana didn't understand why Dante was stroking her lips. She remembered that kiss and immediately blushed. She forced herself to collect her thoughts because she knew that this was all just a game. Still stuttering, she expressed confidence that the last part would get everyone talking about today's events. Then Ariana bowed and added that she would do her best to repay her debt as soon as possible. Dante noted that she really did have a lot to repay him for, and Ariana was surprised that he said a lot. The Duke replied that he had thought so, that the girl was not pretending, but had in fact forgotten too much, and Ariana did not at all understand what his lordship was talking about, what exactly she could have forgotten. "Okay," said Dante, "I'll give you a chance to figure it out for yourself and try to remember." Ariana excitedly went through her memories. He might have been talking about that old incident, but it could not have been connected with his lordship. There was something she was missing. These days, high society was seething with gossip, and news ladies over tea told each other the details of what had happened the day before at the ill-fated wedding. It was simply an incredible sight, and the Marquise Pettigrew, who fainted and hit herself, is now forced to wear a plaster cast. Few could have imagined that his lordship would ruin the wedding and take the bride with him, but the biggest mystery was how this girl managed to win his unapproachable heart. This is exactly what they were talking about in the mansions and salons of the capital. Everyone was wondering what would happen to Her Highness now that she too would learn the news. The fact that Duke Dante Heigenberg disrupted the wedding in order to take the bride away himself has already been printed even in the newspapers. Everyone asked if this was the woman he chose over Princess Katerina. Katerina read the article and remembered the name, Ariana Lopez. The princess was going to see this girl in person. A loud laugh echoed through the Lopez residence. Edward asked Wilhelm if he was sure that the ledger in his hands was correct. Jumping up, Edward exclaimed that it was wonderful. All the seats were sold out on the second and third days. In addition, there were already rumors about ticket resale. This was what a blessing in disguise was, and the thought of it delighted Edward. The obscene scene that devil had created suddenly turned to their advantage. Edward asked Wilhelm how much the total amount was, and the figure was 10 million cadens. The Lopez family didn't have that kind of money, even when Edward's father was the head of the estate. Edward told his assistant to contact the best tailors and order them to bring catalogs. Since he was now rich, he could well afford to treat himself to a pair of expensive suits. Wilhelm looked at Edward with a strange expression on his face. At that very time, Ariana received a letter. She learned that Edward had already ordered costumes to celebrate the sold-out show. Ariana read with a laugh about the unrivaled success of the Lopez Opera House. Her brother must have been in seventh heaven. Ariana hoped that he would fly higher than any clouds from jubilation, and then his fall would bring her only greater pleasure. Now the girl had other plans. Ariana believed it was time to meet with her allies. To begin with, she thanked these people for coming at her invitation. She apologized for not being able to pay more attention to the orchestra recently and expressed hope that rehearsals were going well. But the interlocutors believed that Ariana had no need to apologize because everyone knew how busy she was. Ariana didn't need to worry. Everything planned was going to go like clockwork. If you think about it, these three guests today were the stars of the Lopez Opera House orchestra. Louis was cool, tall, handsome, and undeniably charismatic. Ruben was always angelically sweet. And Lorelei was especially popular among women, distinguished by his special charm and friendly manner. The level of attractiveness in this room was simply off the charts, blinding Ariana. But the girl resolutely pulled herself together, because since she had changed the future of these people, she had to do everything possible for them. She had to justify their faith in her. Suddenly, a man ran into the room with a message for Mrs. Ariana. The carriage of Her Highness the Princess arrived. The Duke was not at home, and therefore Ariana had to decide what to do in such a situation. Everyone was shocked that the princess was somehow here. Ariana thought that Her Highness had arrived even earlier than expected, because everyone knew that Dante was the princess's first love. She said that Her Highness must be here to see her, and she ordered the princess to be escorted to the hall for honored guests. She then turned to a worried Ruben. She asked him to perform one song for them. The idea of performing in front of the princess frightened the musician. But everything happened as Ariana had planned, and soon, beautiful music was filling the bright hall. Ruben played the violin for two ladies sitting at a tea table. The princess stated that although Ariana was a guest like herself, she apparently already imagined herself to be the mistress of this estate. Ariana replied that she understood that her position was an undeserved honor for her, but the Duke allowed her to act on his behalf during his absence. The princess thought it was ridiculous. One might assume that they had already exchanged marriage vows. Ariana didn't know what to answer her. The princess thought gloomily that the engagement had apparently really taken place, and the Duke was truly close to this girl. An article about what happened in Elysium was published quite recently. The man whom the princess personally hired to keep an eye on the Duke was beaten by him before he could find out anything. The fact that they had become engaged so quickly still sounded like complete nonsense, and the princess refused to accept it. Ariana said that she knew that she did not have many merits in comparison with Her Highness, and that someone more refined would be suitable for the role of the mistress of this estate. Someone like Her Highness? The princess did not understand what her interlocutor had in mind, why she suddenly launched into such flattering speeches, but she was absolutely right. Ariana began talking about the delicate pattern that adorned the princess's dress. Her Highness did not allow her to change the subject so abruptly. Ariana replied that she had only wanted to say that the design was so beautiful and delicate, but she had thought that it would be impertinent of her to praise Her Highness's dress. The princess suddenly opened her fan and covered her face with it. But Ariana had no intention of offending her in any way. The princess thought about her interlocutor. What was wrong with her? Why she had such impeccable taste? Now the princess saw that, contrary to all the piquant rumors about this girl, Ariana's face looked as if she were a virtuous maiden from an honorable family. She was so beautiful. The princess said that Ariana has a keen eye, because she personally drew the pattern for this dress, so it is impossible to order a similar one from any tailor. "So this is your work," Ariana exclaimed, and it was no wonder then that the style seemed so familiar. The princess was surprised that this near stranger knew something about her personal drawing style. Ariana happily explained that she even had one of the princess's art brochures. Art brochures could only be works that the princess had made at the Royal Academy of Art in Ende. Her Highness became terribly agitated, the reasons for which were incomprehensible to Ariana. She coldly ordered her interlocutor to get rid of these brochures that very second. This surprised Ariana very much, and she asked why she had to do this. The enraged princess screamed that she had done these works many years ago. There were so many mistakes that she could not even bring herself to look at them. Ariana replied that perhaps for the princess herself this was true, but for her those paintings were the only consolation. Especially the one with the girl holding a dandelion fluff. The way the girl could neither let go nor squeeze what would fly away from her hands comforted Ariana when she felt lonely because of what she could never have. Ariana admitted that it might sound strange, but she felt as if that painting understood and shared her sadness. She looked at the princess with a smile. The empty sadness that comes from wanting what you can't have was exactly what Her Highness was thinking about when she painted this picture. Never before has anyone shown such a deep understanding of the princess's work. Princess Katerina told herself to collect her thoughts. This must all have been some kind of scheme. She couldn't forget why she came here. The princess admitted that Ariana had a very sharp and penetrating eye, but she was wrong to believe that this cheap flattery was capable of convincing her and winning her favor. Katerina said she refuses to sit on the sidelines and watch as Ariana drags Dante into indecent scandals. She knew it was useless, that there had never been a chance to marry Dante. He already has enormous power, and if he also becomes the heir to the throne, the political balance of this empire will be plunged into chaos. At this moment, the princess turned her attention to the music. She remarked out loud that the melody had been playing for some time, and Ariana suggested that they tell the violinist to stop if Her Highness did not like it. Katerina replied that she didn't mean that, she just wanted to know where the melody came from. To tell the truth, Ariana said, this piece was inspired by a painting that Her Highness exhibited at the last Foundation Festival. It was called Two-Faced Joy, and the song was created to represent the melancholy of the princess's painting. Katerina didn't understand what was going on at all, how this girl could understand her art so well. The princess asked how Ariana even heard this song. Ariana replied that she wrote it, which amazed Katerina, who simply could not believe that a woman wrote the melody. Ariana said that it was true, just as it was true that a princess, also a woman, painted that picture. Katerina guessed that Ariana had deliberately ordered that nice violinist to play that piece after she learned that the princess had arrived. Now everything became clear to her. This girl planned everything from the very beginning to gain Katerina's trust. Angered, the princess said she would return another time, said goodbye and left, leaving Ariana in bewilderment. Ariana thought that the rumors that the princess was partial to flattery were true. Now for some time she would not oppose her plans. But Ariana had not lied at all when she confessed to Her Highness her love for her paintings, and it was also true that she had written the melody, inspired by the two-faced joy. Ariana sincerely hoped that the princess would see her sincerity. After a couple of days, many people lined up in a long queue. Elena walked in front of these people with a triumphant smile. People from the crowd greeted Mrs. Elena. They said that she was as beautiful as always, that they were looking forward to her performance. Elena thought contentedly that what happened at the wedding only helped the Lopez family attract unprecedented attention. Every show was sold out. It was weird that once Ariana disappeared, things started to get so much better. It even seemed that it was the sister who was the cause of all the previous failures. Elena just couldn't understand why Mr. Lucas continued to insist on searching for Ariana when it was completely obvious that they were doing well without her. Elena was sure that after the colossal success of today's performance, even Mr. Lucas would finally understand who the real treasure of the Lopez Opera House was. And then it would be she who would become the next Marquise of Pettigrew. With this in mind, Elena entered the opera house. But her mood was not destined to remain serene there. Edward was furious because there was no one from the orchestra there, and he did not understand where they could be. Elena asked what the meaning was that the orchestra was missing, since the performance was about to begin. Edward replied irritably that he had said exactly what he meant. None of the musicians had shown up. Elena exclaimed that these people simply could not be late on such an important day. She stated that it was Edward's responsibility to make sure they were here, even if it meant dragging them out of their homes. But Edward had already checked their houses, and they were nowhere to be found, as if they had all decided to disappear at once. And then Elena asked if they couldn't just hire someone else. Edward shouted at his sister, calling her names, because no musician on the planet could learn such a complex piece in such a short time. The man who had joined the Lopez siblings asked if Edward meant to say that the show would have to be cancelled. It was Lucas Pettigrew, and Edward hastened to assure him that the Marquis did not need to worry because he had already found a pianist. They would manage without it. Edward grabbed his sister by the wrist and pulled her roughly towards him, causing her to cry out in pain and surprise. Edward told Elena to go and buy them time. "What are you saying?" Elena exclaimed. She didn't understand what she was supposed to do on stage without a single accompanist, but Edward shouted in her face that she could do whatever she wanted, sing songs or juggle. He didn't care what she came up with. "Listen here, Elena Lopez," Edward said. "He put a lot of money on this opera house, and now he simply couldn't lose everything because of someone's stupid mistake. If this happens, Edward might get very angry." "Okay," Elena said with a tremor. She walked out onto the empty stage, surrounded by whispers from the audience. When Elena started singing, people started asking where the orchestra was, why the soprano was singing alone on stage. Maybe this was some new move. Elena continued to sing the aria without musical accompaniment. From the very first moment I saw you, she sang the lines of a song. But the audience said that the singer had a good voice, but it all sounded dull without accompaniment. They hadn't paid that kind of money to hear a soprano sing a cappella. Elena convinced herself that she was a professional and that she would be able to cope with such circumstances. She simply had to, because if she failed now, it was scary to imagine what Edward would do. Elena continued the aria, but felt a chill on her skin. At that moment, Elena noticed a man in the front row. It was Ariana, who sat smiling and looking at the stage. Elena didn't understand what her sister was doing here. The audience noticed a change in Elena's singing, assumed that she was singing out of tune, and then the singer stopped altogether. Elena thought angrily that Ariana had come here on purpose because she wanted to provoke her. That could be the only reason why the sister was here. Elena thought that it wouldn't be easy, because Ariana's presence alone wasn't enough to make her lose her temper. Because unfortunately for Ariana, Elena was no amateur at all. She would show everyone who they were dealing with. No matter how evil these feelings were, Elena sang, "I will sell my honor, I will lose my morality." The words of the aria said, "No, Ariana will never be able to displace her." Elena was the only one who owned this brilliant stage. Elena was born to shine in opera, but at that very moment she saw something far more disturbing. These were photographs that captured her and Lucas in their most indecent moments. It turned out that Ariana knew everything from the very beginning. She had been watching Elena and Lucas long before their ill-fated wedding. Hiding behind a mask of calm, Ariana simply waited for the right moment to strike. "What's wrong?" Ariana asked, looking at her sister, and ordered her to continue singing. "This is still your aria," Ariana said. But this was the aria of the harlot, which Ariana once said with such enthusiasm. At that time, Elena didn't know why Ariana had such a triumphant smile. Elena realized that Ariana had written this song to mock her sister, and now it made her furious. After this episode, people started to leave. They said that they had thrown their money away, and all after talking about how this performance would go down in history. After all, the audience had paid a fortune not to see Elena alone, but to enjoy sophisticated music. Now some of them were going to demand a refund, because the organizers could not think that all these funds were thrown away on a third-rate opera. When one of the audience members said this out loud, the others agreed with him completely. It was unacceptable that such a wonderful evening had been hopelessly ruined. So said the man, who then pointed towards the fountain and remarked that he had heard that someone was holding a high-class performance on the Place de la Madeleine, and absolutely free of charge. He himself walked quickly there and suggested that the rest of the disappointed spectators do the same. "Place de la Madeleine," the man in the top hat asked his neighbor and suggested they go there too. Ariana hurried towards Place de la Madeleine, hoping very much that she was not late. Where she was in such a hurry to go was already very crowded and noisy. Everyone was surprised that there was a whole orchestra on the square. It was unclear what it was doing there. The young singer with pink hair stepped forward. She was terribly nervous, not knowing if she could cope. Rosalyn, a familiar voice, sounded very close, and the girl looked up. She saw Ariana, her lady, and beamed. Ariana smiled and told Rosalyn to just do it like she did in rehearsal. They had a month to prepare. It wasn't enough by any means, but Ariana could confidently say that everyone gave it their all every day. The time and effort they spent was not in vain. The orchestra conductor looked back at Ariana and nodded. The show was about to begin. Here the violins began to sound. The melody flowed around, bewitching the audience. The music was so beautiful that some of the female spectators could not contain their cries of admiration. "From the moment I saw you," Rosalyn began to sing in the meantime. "I knew you would ignite a forbidden desire in me," as the aria said. The audience was surprised at who this singer was with such an exquisite voice, because they had never heard her sing before. Ariana thought Rosalyn was doing very well. But just recently this girl said that she wanted to become better than Lady Elena, even though it may sound impudent. Rosalyn thought there must be a reason why Ariana had offered her patronage, especially since the Lopez Opera House had a magnificent soprano, Elena. Rosalyn didn't know all the details, but she had a theory. Perhaps Lady Ariana was trying to get back all the songs that her family had stolen, songs like In Power. So Rosalyn intended to devote herself entirely to this performance. She wanted to repay Ariana for giving her a chance. "Hidden from prying eyes, I will charm you with my charm," Rosalyn sang now. After all, the forbidden fruit is always the sweetest. The audience was delighted by the singer's beautiful and very powerful voice, but was a little confused by the text of the aria. Even if my friend is standing next to me, her husband continues to attract my gaze. The risk of being discovered only adds to the trepidation, the song said. The audience understood that the heroine was saying that she was going to seduce her friend's husband. "All we need is to not get caught. Our lies are as innocent as the first snow," sang Rosalyn. One of the viewers was outraged by such words. Could the lie really be innocent? And cheaters always think that they are not doing anything bad. "Make love to me, darling," Rosalyn cried, stretching her hand to the sky. She sang about the adultery that took place in the garden, in the corridor of the mansion, and even in the dressing room of the cheater. Viewers thought it was so vulgar to choose not only the garden, but also the dressing room of a deceived girlfriend as the place for their dates, as if they were animals who could not restrain their impulses of passion. But the song claimed that this love was too sweet to be a crime. "But even if there was, I would gladly get a life sentence," Rosalyn sang with enthusiasm. Edward and Lucas also came to the square. They saw with their own eyes why all their spectators came here. It was a dirty trick from Ariana, the impudent scoundrel. Lucas was also furious that the song was clearly about him and Elena. After finishing the aria, Rosalyn thanked the audience for coming to enjoy their performance and then proceeded to introduce their composer. Ariana's heels clicked as she approached the performers. Rosalyn named Lady Ariana Lopez. Lucas thought that Ariana would still pay him for everything. Ariana bowed to the audience and thanked them all for their attention. But they all knew this lady. They saw her picture in the newspaper. It was Ariana Lopez, the runaway bride. Everyone was surprised that it was she who wrote the song they had just heard, and this lady was so young that it was hard to believe her skill. Ariana Lopez, suddenly there was a loud shout. It was Edward who finally made his way to the front row of the audience. He rushed to his sister to ask how she dared to steal his stage, but Ariana only replied that it was a surprise for her to see Edward, Mr. Pettigrew, here. "It would be more correct to say return, not steal," she noted, looking into her brother's eyes. "What? Oh, you little liar!" Edward shouted, swinging his hand at her. Edward was furious, believing that he was the author of this song. People continued to whisper. They did not understand what kind of return they could be talking about, what this girl was talking about. Edward felt a shiver run down his spine from all this gossip. But he was pushed aside by Lucas, who was trying to get through to Ariana. When he reached her, he grabbed the girl by the shoulders and shouted, asking where the hell she was. He wanted to know how he could be ignored after Ariana had humiliated him so much. But Ariana replied that she believed he had no right to judge her. "No right, huh?" Lucas responded, because he believed that she never had the right to insult him in such a way. He shouted in her face that it was Ariana who had the affair, not him, and he demanded that she tell the truth about the first time she cheated on him with the Duke. Ariana remarked that it was too funny that he was actually accusing her of something he had done himself. Lucas believed that the girl was pretending after what she did in front of everyone. Lucas thought that Ariana was using it as an excuse to not let him have fun with her, and then gave her body to the Duke. Now it was necessary to make her pay for it. Lucas leaned over to Ariana and said that he feared that her life as a noble was over, because nothing ruined a girl's reputation more than betrayal. She was wrong to think that Lucas wouldn't notice that she was trying to humiliate him again, but the song's pathetic lyrics aren't enough to do the damage it deserves. Lucas loudly declared that Ariana was the one who betrayed him by having a dirty affair with the Duke, and Elena was only comforting him in despair. All the spectators heard the accusations of the Marquis, who asked how Ariana could turn everything into vulgar indecency. Lucas said he told her over and over again to be less paranoid. He stated that he always knew that Ariana would get angry if he even looked at another woman, but he never thought that her jealousy would go beyond all bounds. Lucas thought that as soon as Ariana found out about his relationship with Elena, he would visit her personal doctor to order a certificate indicating that the girl was suffering from paranoia and delusional jealousy. The Pettigrew estate may not be what it once was, but it can still bring some minor noblewoman to her knees. Ariana will regret that she dared to cross his path. With feigned concern, he announced to everyone that he should have paid more attention to treating her delirium, since he was so concerned about the condition of his dear bride. Ariana smiled and said that perhaps the story about paranoia and delusional jealousy was the best counterattack Lucas could come up with. Lucas didn't understand why the girl was smiling like that. Ariana asked a gloomy Lucas to forgive her. It was just more pathetic than she imagined. She explained with a grin that she simply meant that she would not have acted so confident if she had paid a gambling addict doctor for a certificate. Ariana said she really doubted she would have spent her meager fortune on such a fruitless endeavor. For viewers, the news that the Marquise had bribed the doctor to make the lady appear paranoid was stunning. Now they were talking about how the lady looked as sane as the rest of them. Lucas shouted that none of this changed the fact that Ariana had entered into an inappropriate relationship with the Duke. She couldn't deny it, because she was the one who ran out holding his hand. Ariana replied that she noticed that Elena was not there, and then she could assume that the Marquise simply did not hear what she heard. She was talking about the photographs she showed Elena during her performance. Now she will show the photographs to the Marquis, throwing them in his face. Everyone will be able to see this evidence of her rightness. Ariana recalled the law that concerned divorce. If an incident occurs that is worthy of dissolution of the union, the victim has the right to divorce regardless of the consent of the partner. However, no responsibility is borne for actions that occurred after the incident. Ariana slammed the entire stack of photographs into Lucas's chest. She said that all this meant was that from the moment her fiancé cheated on her with her sister, she had the right to be with whoever she wanted. Lucas looked at these pictures with trembling, trying to understand how they were taken. He asked how long Ariana had known all this. People around picked up the scattered photographs. They saw in them direct evidence that everything the lady said was true. It turned out that the lyrics of that song were based on a true story. Lucas looked at Ariana's face and said that she was one evil woman. Now it was no wonder that she made him sick. She was always just pretending to be sweet and innocent, but in reality, all this time she was planning to destroy him. Innocence was the only redeeming feature of Ariana, but now she destroyed it with her own hands. Lucas believed that the Duke would quickly get tired of Ariana, because she was just a boring and ugly toy for him, completely undeserving of love. He asked how Ariana had managed to seduce the Duke in the first place, unless she had offered him her body, but none of that would matter, ever. At that moment, a man approached them and grabbed Lucas. It was Duke Heigenberg, who said that he had no idea that he and Lucas had become so close that he dared to forget about formalities. Lucas was trembling and did not know what he could say to his lordship. Squeezing his hand hard, Dante declared that those seeking his attention should remember that the closer a person is to him, the less delicate he is with them. But since he and Lucas had become so close, Dante felt he had the right to give him advice, and he noted that there was nothing more pathetic than a man who was obsessed with a woman who had left him. The Duke ordered to stop pestering his bride. He threw Lucas away from him with force. When Lucas started coughing, Dante told him to get out of his sight. Then he put his arm around Ariana's shoulders and invited her to leave together. They walked away, followed by the gaze of the crowd. Soon the Duke's carriage was already taking them away from the square. Dante said that first Ariana got slapped, then she stood there and let that bastard insult her. Dante reminded him that he had already said that even if Ariana saw their relationship as a simple contract, she was still his future duchess. By allowing herself to be humiliated, Ariana was also humiliating the Duke. Ariana looked at Dante and replied that she was asking for forgiveness. She was silent when Lucas said those words because she was only thinking about how it would be to turn his words against him. The girl thanked the Duke for his help today. Dante replied that she didn't need to thank her. He had already told her to use everything he had, because that way he wouldn't have a guilty conscience when he did the same to Ariana herself. Ariana replied that she had done nothing that her interlocutor might consider useful. "Don't worry," the Duke whispered, leaning towards the girl's ear. He reminded her that she would do enough for him when they got married. This made Ariana extremely confused. Could Dante really have meant exactly what she thought? But it was impossible for him. "Lopez," Dante said, looking into her eyes. He noticed with a smile that the girl had turned completely red. The Duke said he understood that, as an actress, Ariana had a very active imagination, but suggested that they try to rein it in. Ariana responded indignantly that that was not what she meant at all. The next day was clear, and birds were chirping loudly near the mansion. Ariana couldn't wait to see what they had written about yesterday, and she hurried to open the newspaper. There was an article in the newspaper about the Marquis of Pettigrew being caught in an illicit relationship with the soprano Elena Lopez. It turned out that the Marquis was having an affair with the younger sister of his own fiancé. After Ariana revealed Lucas's affair yesterday, she sent a small gift to the 3 most popular newspapers in this country. Among others, there were pictures in which the faces of Lucas and Elena were especially clearly visible. Now she smiled that the articles had turned out even better than she had originally expected, with catchy headlines and compelling evidence. Suddenly, something else caught the girl's attention. This newspaper was called the Morning Empire. It was the most prestigious publication in the entire country, and they usually didn't stoop to telling gossip. Yet they wrote the article without conducting any separate investigation. The entire issue of today's Morning Empire was completely sold out. The servant informed the Duke that, thanks to him, this was all everyone was talking about. But nevertheless, the assistant really wanted to ask his lordship a question that had been bothering him lately. First, the Duke stole the bride from the altar, then out of the blue, she asked her assistant to write an article for him. But in any case, his lordship's order was carried out, and the special edition of the newspaper was completed, and as for the influence, that was quite obvious. Dante remarked that it made a wonderful wedding gift. The assistant said with surprise that he did not believe that the Duke was seriously planning to get married. But Dante calmly replied that of course he was going to, otherwise there would be no point in him going so far and stealing the bride in front of everyone. These words greatly surprised the assistant. Could it really have been that same Dante Heigenberg who was now sitting in front of him who had spoken them? The newspaper reported a shocking twist, that the lyrics of the harlot's aria were based on the story of its composer, Ariana Lopez. The attached photos were truly frightening. They showed everything in detail. No one in society could have imagined that the Marquis of Pettigrew was capable of such a thing, because he looked so decent, and also with a soprano that had recently become very popular. Everyone has read that the harlot's aria was a true story, about 2 people indulging in criminal passion in the garden, in the hallway, in the dressing room of a deceived friend. It was incredibly obscene. The bell above the door rang melodically. The one who had been the heroine of the most popular gossip in recent days appeared on the threshold. Elena Lopez fixed her hair and greeted those present, but all the ladies demonstratively turned away from her. Elena didn't understand how they dared to ignore her so brazenly. She walked up to Mrs. Olivia and loudly praised the lace on her dress. But Olivia shielded herself from her with an open fan and said that it was too rude to address her so casually, since they were not friends at all. Then she turned her back to Elena, and Elena thought that this impudent girl had literally begged her to visit her salon a week ago. No one talked to Elena herself, but everyone discussed her among themselves, only not as a famous singer worthy of admiration, but as the one who had an affair with her own sister's fiancé, about whom there were lines about lies, innocent as the first snow. The ladies could not believe the impudence of this woman. Elena tried to persuade herself to remain calm in the face of these temporary difficulties. But it's not for nothing that they say that a couple of scandals accompany every real star. Suddenly, someone called out to Elena, and she thought that people were still looking for her attention. Yes, Elena responded readily and asked what they wanted from her. The girl in modest clothes said that she worked for a tailor in a nearby neighborhood. They still hadn't received payment for Elena's latest dress. Elena flushed and replied that payment would certainly be made and that her brother would take care of the matter in the very near future. The girl said that their manager demanded payment in full by the end of the week, but Elena sharply responded that she had already said that she would pay. She left, slamming the door, and the ladies began to whisper again, looking after her. Elena ran down the street in terrible irritation. Passers-by cast glances at her, which only increased her anger. She didn't understand what they were all staring at. The fact that these people perceived her as a laughingstock drove her crazy. Suddenly someone grabbed Elena by the hand. The girl gasped and recoiled. The stranger tried to hold her back, and when the hood revealed his face, Elena recognized Lucas. He shouted at her that she should now be hiding at home from prying eyes and not parading through the streets. Elena replied that she wanted to explain herself to people and restore her reputation. But Lucas was sure that there was nothing to explain here. Everything had already been described in newspaper articles. "Listen to me, Elena," he said. He believed that there was one way out of this. These words encouraged the girl. Lucas explained that there was a newspaper with which he had good relations. Lucas can arrange for their reporter to meet with Elena, and then she will have to make a confession. She will have to say that she herself pestered the Marquise. After all, the only evidence there is a photo of their kiss. Elena will have to tell the reporter that she kissed him out of desperation, because of passionate, unrequited love. The girl objected that then her reputation will be completely ruined. She said she had a better idea. They should face the gossip head-on. When Lucas didn't understand what Elena meant, she replied that they could get married. She can promise the Marquise with all confidence that she will be a better wife to him than Ariana could ever be. Lucas just laughed in response to these speeches. He noted with a grin that Elena was just an ordinary commoner. He never intended to marry a person of such origin. Lucas reminded Elena of circumstances that she seemed to have forgotten, because despite the fact that Edward and Ariana's mother was the daughter of a count, Elena's mother was just a commoner. There was no way a nobleman could marry a low-born woman. Elena asked if it was normal for a nobleman to sleep with a low-born person. "Oh, Elena," Lucas sighed, leaning towards the girl to whisper in her ear that everyone should be aware of their situation and stay where they belong. Elena repeated to herself these words about the position and place where she should remain. It was the only way that would allow them to survive together. The mansion was also discussing the recent news that Lady Elena's tailor had asked her to hurry up and pay the bill in front of everyone, and she had to leave the salon in a hurry, and Ariana's maid said that Elena deserved it. Ariana thought that everything was exactly as she expected. Probably her brother and sister were already deeply in debt because of how much money had to be paid back for the opera. The maid heard that a man with red hair dragged Elena into an alley. Most likely it was Lucas Pettigrew. She was very interested in what they could talk about. A high-born aristocrat had found himself embroiled in a dirty scandal with a woman of lower status, and given how much Lucas cared about his reputation, it was obvious to Ariane that he would say such a thing. But the Elena Ariana knew was far more unprincipled and ambitious than Lucas could have imagined. Ariana handed Sophie the maid a letter and told her to give it to Wilhelm when she returned to the Lopez mansion. And when the maid reminded the lady that she also needed to change out of the dress she was currently wearing, Ariana replied that she was going to meet his lordship. Sophie blushed and exclaimed that she could not even imagine that the lady had such important things to do today. With unexpected enthusiasm, the maid said that her lady need not worry about anything and could trust her completely. The sun was already setting. Evening was approaching. Ariana went to the Duke's private office. She asked permission to enter, and then she appeared before his lordship in an image renewed by Sophie's efforts. Dante looked at her thoughtfully. It seemed that Sophie had gone a little overboard in decorating her mistress, but there was no stopping the excited maid. Ariana said she wanted to give Dante something. She opened the lid of the piano. Watching the Duke lately, Ariana realized that he always seemed very tired, as he worked until late hours. Dante was always dozing when they were riding in the carriage, so Ariana had an idea. This was the very first song Ariana ever wrote. In the past, when she was still a small child, once at a picnic she suggested that her mother also lie down as she did. She made up a lullaby for her, hoping that her mother would have pleasant dreams. Grandfather praised her and said that he thought that a genius composer had appeared in their family. This is the melody that Ariana decided to play for Dante now. Although she didn't know if it would help him in any way, Dante stood up from under the table and walked over to Ariana. He stopped her playing, took her hand, and said that it was talented. Then he added that it was mesmerizing, and Ariana's heart started beating faster. She hoped that Dante meant the melody, its influence. Ariana decided to ask about the article that appeared in the Morning Empire. She needed to know if it was the work of his lordship. The Duke asked her why she thought so, and Ariana explained that she saw no other reason why such a conservative newspaper would publish such news so quickly. Ariana knew that the melodies didn't mean that much, but to her regret, there was nothing more she could do for him right now. The girl had heard that soothing music, like the one she had just played, helped her fall asleep, and if his lordship liked it, she could write him the notes right away. No, Dante said thoughtfully. And then he added that he would prefer that she play for him whenever he wanted. Dante stated that he might call Ariana on those nights when he was plagued by insomnia. He leaned even lower towards her neck and asked if Ariana used perfume. Sophie just told her mistress today that she heard that scented hair accessories are in fashion now. Ariana realized that the maid had put her new knowledge to use right now when she was doing her hair. She asked Dante if it mattered whether she wore perfume. Dante asked if she knew what the scent was, but Ariana wasn't at all sure. The Duke informed her that it was a cyclamen, also known as an alpine violet. Ariana thought that cyclamen grew in cold regions, and perhaps the Duke's estate was the place where it grew. Dante explained that in the language of scents, cyclamen meant an invitation to follow the one who uses it. It was also an invitation to come to his bedroom. Ariana thought that Sophie probably hadn't chosen the poems for that purpose. She wasn't that calculating. The problem was Dante, who for some reason decided to focus on such insignificant details. No, maybe it was because Ariana kept getting confused every time. She asked his lordship for forgiveness. Understanding the language of flowers was a vital part of an aristocrat's education, Ariana acknowledged and now apologized for her ignorance. Dante chuckled. He couldn't even imagine that one could admit ignorance in such an elegant style. The Duke noticed that lately the revenge planned by Ariana had apparently been going smoothly, thanks to which he, too, was having fun. But he did not forget to remind the girl that she still had not paid for all the services he had provided. Ariana readily agreed to this and assured him that she would try to fulfill the role of his wife conscientiously. Dante told them not to forget that from tomorrow people would start coming to the mansion to organize a wedding. He intended to make Ariana the most desirable and beautiful bride in the country. "Stop being so unreasonable," Ariana heard. "Who knows, maybe I would protect you like a rare treasure." In both Ariana's past and present lives, this man was the only one who said he would appreciate her. But now Dante said with a grin that he was suggesting that Ariana prepare thoroughly. "Yes, Your Highness," the girl responded. She said she would go and headed towards the door, but the Duke did not let her go. He approached again to ask if she could remember what she had forgotten. Alas, unfortunately, Ariana's memories have not yet returned. Dante said she'd better find a way to refresh her memory. It was deep night. Ariana was sleeping in the mansion room, and the moonlight was falling on her bed. Her sleep was restless. She tossed and turned and moaned. She felt as if she were still a little girl who was quickly running away from an unknown danger. She had to run or she would die, but she tripped over a pebble on the way. She fell to the ground with a scream. She hit herself very hard when she fell. Very carefully, Ariana began to try to get to her feet. Ariana began to cry for her mother. Then she covered her head with her hands and called her grandfather. Ariana woke up in her bed with this feeling of fear. She realized that it was just a dream. In it, Ariana saw again the day when she lost her grandfather and mother. She was then 10 years old. Every time she tried to think about those events, a piercing headache appeared, which forced her to stop, but for some reason she dreamed about that day. Maybe it was because the Duke made her remember something. Perhaps Ariana was simply missing something important. Daytime at the Lopez mansion. The maids discussed gossip. No one could believe that Miss Ariana, who was almost ignored by no one, would become a duchess. After all, everyone knew that in this family, Miss Elena was always the most popular. And since the conversation turned to Miss Elena, everyone immediately remembered that she still hadn't left her room. One of the maids saw Wilhelm going up to her. The girls looked up thoughtfully. Wilhelm actually came into Helena's room and said that he knew that she had remained in her room since she returned from the city. Elena replied that if he was going to lecture her, he'd better disappear. Wilhelm assumed that she had met the Marquis of Pettigrew, and Wilhelm also guessed that the Marquis had suggested that she take all the blame upon herself. Elena admitted that he wanted her to say that she had come to him without his consent. He said that if she did this, he would find her a good husband in another country. Wilhelm noted that as soon as Miss Elena left these lands, her life would be in serious danger, but the girl did not immediately understand what he was talking about. Wilhelm explained that the Marquis was not one to leave evidence behind, and he knew perfectly well that if Elena died, no one would know the whole truth. "What?" Elena cried out in horror. She couldn't believe that Wilhelm had just suggested that Mr. Lucas was going to kill her. Wilhelm was not sure about this, but his words convinced Helena. Lucas said he didn't know why he should marry her. He really could have done that. Elena screamed for Wilhelm to do something. She was a Lopez, just like Edward and Ariana. How could the butler of their house just stand and watch while her life was in danger? Wilhelm replied that he had no intention of simply standing and watching. He said there was only one way to be saved. At this time in the Duke's mansion, Ariana was actively involved in preparations for her own wedding. She was studying wedding catalogs, and the milliner looked at her with curiosity. She couldn't believe that she was actually face to face with Ariana Lopez, the Duke's famous lover. If she, Madame Evelyn, is chosen to make Ariana's wedding dress, she will become incredibly popular. She also anticipated a considerable income, since the Duke was famous for his generosity. Ariana said that all these dresses were very beautiful. She chose the style that seemed most suitable to her. The only thing she didn't know was whether she would be able to stay within her planned budget. Ariana remembered that the milliner hadn't been told anything about this yet. She indicated that they had to keep within 50 million cadines, which sounded to the milliner like she could afford anything. Madame Evelyn said that the young lady need not worry, because all the dresses in the catalog were cheaper than the price Ariana had quoted. Then Ariana said it wouldn't work for her, because the dress was supposed to cost more than 50 million. After all, his lordship forbade buying a dress that would cost less. The limit was on the minimum cost, not the maximum. But all the jewelry in the salon was not worth even 100 million together, and Ariana noted that Madame Evelyn was reacting in exactly the same way as the jeweler she had met the day before. Ariana had no idea that she would be made the most expensive bride in the country, and she couldn't even imagine that the Duke was literally saying this. She said she knew she was asking too much, so she would just find another store. Madame Evelyn exclaimed that they had imported silk from the East. They could make the skirts of the dress from many tiers of this silk. You can also sew diamonds onto the lace, and then the price of the dress will immediately increase. Ariana thought that this move might actually work. Madame Evelyn asked Ariana to simply rely on her in this matter. The milliner could not allow the empire's biggest fish to slip out of her hands just because of some price restrictions. Ariana agreed and said that she would then look forward to the completion of her dress. Madame Evelyn noticed that his lordship seemed to love Lady Ariana very much, for he treasured her so much that it warmed her heart. Ariana thanked with a chuckle. Madame Evelyn said that the Duke had become a safe haven for the lady after all the troubles that had befallen her. Madame Evelyn intended to find out everything about this story, all the piquant details of the relationship between this couple. Ariana nodded and agreed that the Duke had helped her a lot during difficult times. Madame Evelyn decided to remember that the Duke had consoled Lady Ariana, and she suggested out loud that for Ariana, the most significant thing had been some special occasion. Ariana replied that if her interlocutor was talking about her fiancé's betrayal, then that's exactly how it all happened. She said that at first she had irritated him greatly because even though she knew about the betrayal, she had tried to marry her former fiancé, and Madame Evelyn had made a note in her head that Lady Ariana's engagement had made the Duke angry. Ariana, meanwhile, revealed that his lordship had saved her at the altar from a tragic life after marriage. Even though the Duke's methods were aggressive, it helped Ariana come to her senses. She said that now she was sincerely grateful to his lordship for saving her. Madame Evelyn thought that she had known it all along that it had happened just like that. The Duke consoled the woman who was betrayed, only to fall in love with her himself, perhaps for him. Her bitter tears were like knives piercing his heart. He risked his reputation to save her from disaster. Ariana added that, among other things, his lordship refrained from publicly discussing Lucas's betrayal. He said he didn't want everyone to know how much pain Ariana was in. "Oh my God!" cried Madame Evelyn, realizing that Lady Ariana might not be telling the truth. And then the Duke would be the only one who would suffer the consequences of the disrupted wedding. It was an amazingly touching love story, and the heroine of this story was now sitting in front of Madame Evelyn and wanted her wedding dress to be made right here. In the heat of her emotions, Madame Evelyn jumped up impulsively. The milliner declared that she would make the most exquisite, most beautiful dress in the world for Lady Ariana, and she vowed to do everything in her power to live up to the customer's expectations. Ariana was almost scorched by this burst of enthusiasm and thanked Madame Evelyn. Madame Evelyn felt inspired, and Ariana hoped that the woman was good at spreading rumors. She told the same thing to the other merchants she met during the preparations for the wedding. She was sure that her version of what happened would soon be known to all of high society. If she's lucky, this will fill in all the gaps in her relationship with Dante. This marriage should look like a perfect love story until their contract is completed. The Heigenberg mansion was filled with light and music. Guests were impressed that the famous home was completely open for the wedding. The music was played by the same orchestra that played in the square. Many couldn't wait to hear their wedding anthem. And then the wedding bell rang, announcing the imminent arrival of the bride and groom. The doors swung open, letting in a blinding light. Oh, how beautiful the bride was, from her shoes to her ceremonial tiara. It was impossible to believe your eyes when she entered the hall. Together with the Duke, they made a brilliant couple. Madame Evelyn burst into tears. This day seemed to her the best in her life. Ariana's heart was beating wildly. She herself did not understand why she was so nervous, because this was not her first wedding. The priest asked if Duke Dante Heigenberg swears to love and cherish his bride forever. Of course, Dante answered with a smile. The priest then turned to Lady Ariana Lopez and asked if she was ready to take her marriage vows. There was silence in the room for a moment, and then Ariana said her consent. "I swear," she said. "Don't forget, Ariana," Dante said, turning to his bride. He whispered to her that she was participating in all this of her own free will. With these words, the Duke kissed Ariana. The marriage was concluded amidst numerous applause and admiring cries from the guests. Once again, the beautiful music of their orchestra was heard, and the guests could enjoy the treats. The sounds of the violin spread everywhere. Dante remarked on the magnificent melody and jokingly asked who composed it, and Ariana brushed off his constant teasing. Dante replied that he was not teasing her at all, because everyone was very surprised when he said that Ariana composed the music. Now everyone is looking forward to performing at the Foundation Festival. Ariana asked incredulously if the Duke really thought so. Dante assured her that this was indeed the case, and then added that he himself was looking forward to something else. When Ariana didn't understand what he was talking about, he whispered to her that he hoped she didn't think they would sleep separately on their wedding night. Ariana blushed and had no idea what to say. "Ariana," Elena called out to her, appearing in a luxurious dress among the guests. She said that her sister looked beautiful. With a smile, she congratulated Ariana on her wedding and said that she was very happy for her. No one expected her to have the courage to show up at this wedding reception. People at the celebration whispered that Elena's appearance was impudent. They did not understand how she even got in there. Madame Evelyn hastened to intervene and asked the unexpected guest what had brought her here and whether Miss Elena Lopez was not ashamed to appear here after all. Elena bowed her head dramatically and said repentantly that she was very sorry. The girl was trembling, and Madame Evelyn asked why she was shaking so. "Ah," said Ariana and ordered to raise her head. With demonstrative sobs, Elena said that she simply intended to congratulate Ariana, that she was there only for this. Ariana thought her sister had improved her acting skills significantly since their last meeting. She had clearly applied white makeup to her face to make her look pale and haggard, and had painted her eyes to make it look like she had been crying a lot. Elena assured that Ariana really does look great. She is not lying when she thinks that she and the Duke look great together. The guests were surprised to discuss whether this was the same conversation that Elena had come here for. It was unheard of, since hardly anyone would want to receive blessings from a person like her. Elena said with a miserable look that it seemed she shouldn't have come here at all. She just thought that when Ariana became a duchess, they would no longer be able to meet. At least she understood that. And Elena said there was something Ariana should know. Elena said she couldn't muster the courage to speak out about it earlier. Ariana asked what it was and told Elena to tell her. She wanted to see what trick her sister would use this time. At this point, a young man, burning with indignation, joined the conversation and declared that Miss Elena was in fact the victim, and that everyone had simply misunderstood the situation. This man was the only child of the Schmidt family. His name was Adolf, but Ariana did not understand why he was taking Elena's side. Adolf exclaimed that there was something that Ariana simply did not know yet. Miss Elena was a victim. The Duke pulled his bride closer to him. He said that today the bride should be the happiest in the world. The Duke expressed doubt that Adolf's story was so important as to upset Ariana on such a special day for her. Adolf felt the oppressive presence of the Duke and could not utter another word. Elena told him that everything was fine. It just seemed like her sister still didn't want to see him. Looking at the dejected girl, Adolf thought that she was very unhappy and he must protect her at any cost. He clenched his fists and told the Duke that his story was important. Adolf said that Lady Ariana should not be separated from her beautiful sister because of the words of this lying man. Few people understood whom Adolf called a lying man, but the young man exclaimed that these words could not have been about anyone else but Lucas Pettigrew. According to him, it was Lucas who pestered Miss Elena and confessed his love to her. Miss Elena was shocked and frightened by his behavior, but she had no choice but to suffer in silence. After all, Elena was so afraid that her sister would find out about everything, and Ariana's heart would be broken because of her fiancé's betrayal. This entire fiery speech was met with a rather cold reaction from the audience. Ariana looked at her sister and wondered if these people really thought anyone would believe them after everything that had happened. Adolf ground his teeth in excitement. He stated that there is evidence, because Elena and he have been in a relationship all this time. They were even engaged in secret from everyone. This news has already attracted the attention of the public because it was curious whether the engagement could really connect Elena Lopez and Adolf Schmidt. Elena thought with a grin that sweet and naive Adolf was diligently providing her with an alibi without even thinking that she was deceiving him. Ariana suddenly came closer to her sister and said that she asked permission to give her sincere advice. She leaned towards her ear and whispered that she would only say this once, so she should listen carefully. She said it wasn't the best option for her. Elena didn't understand what Ariana meant by options. The House of Schmidt, Adolf's family, was one of the richest aristocratic houses in the country, and Adolf himself was so stupid and weak that a couple of tears and a few hints would be enough to make his mouth water, and Elena would receive all his property on a silver platter. Ariana probably only said the bad option because she was jealous, so Elena smiled and said that she had no idea what her sister meant. "I see," Ariana said with a mysterious smile. She knew that Adolf would be a good match for Elena, as he was the type of man she could most easily control, but unfortunately, she was soon to discover that he had some very significant flaws, such as growing and distributing illegal plants, and also persecution and kidnapping of people. All his crimes will soon come to light and he will go to jail. To top it all off, the shipping company his family invested in turns out to be a scam, causing them to go bankrupt. First a sexual deviant and now a future criminal, Ariana thought. Elena had a real talent for finding terrible men for herself. Elena sobbed and said that she didn't expect her sister to believe her right away. She always knew that this bothered Ariana. The fact that the Marquise was always kind only to Elena, having said this for everyone to hear, Elena thought that Ariana should wait a little longer and they would start to hate her, and not Elena at all. Elena's eyes glistened with tears, and she said that every time the Marquise came, Ariana told her to wash off her makeup and change into rags. Elena hoped that people would not remain indifferent to her if she managed to arouse their sympathy with a pitiful story, and so she swore out loud that she never had any intention of seducing her sister's fiancé. The audience began to whisper, discussing the fact that the Duchess could be jealous of someone like this woman. But in their voices there was no sympathy at all that Elena had expected, and her cheeks flushed with excitement. She looked at Ariana's face and realized that she was simply laughing at her. "So this is how you responded to my advice," said Ariana, and added that now everything was clear to her, and Elena asked why her sister was behaving so strangely. Ariana asked if Elena's words were true, if Lucas forced her to do all this, even what they did in the dressing room. Bowing her head low, Elena replied that she didn't remember at all what they did there, but yes, she absolutely didn't want to take part in his affairs. Ariana thoughtfully noted that the Marquis seemed to be an even more vicious person than she thought, so now he should be punished. Elena hoped that her sister really believed her and said that they could do nothing because the Marquis was untouchable. Yes, said Ariana. She knew that they were talking about that special immunity that gave the Marquis the right not to be arrested or to avoid investigation of minor crimes. Ariana noted that immunity was not without its vulnerabilities, and even a noble could be accused if enough people voted for it. Ariana smiled and suggested that Elena report Lucas to the authorities, expressing her confidence that all the guests present would help her. "Isn't that true?" she asked the guests who surrounded them. Everyone began to whisper among themselves with great enthusiasm. It seemed that someone wanted them to inform on the nobleman, and yet it would be better if they showed themselves on the good side in front of the future Duchess. This was more important than clinging to Pettigrew in the time of his collapse. Madame Evelyn was the first to volunteer to help. This prompted other guests to join her. Ariana noted with a smile that the Marquis wouldn't have a chance with the support of so many people. Elena was horrified and didn't understand what was happening because she never wanted to do something so tricky as informing on Lucas. She was just trying to change public opinion. Elena tried to remind Ariana that Lord Lucas was a Marquis and therefore acting against him could be dangerous. Ariana said that Elena shouldn't worry because she only needs to look at all these people who want to help. Ariana stated that in the end, the truth always comes out. Elena and Adolf continued their conversation in the carriage. The young man thought that everything had worked out just fine. He was glad that now this vicious Marquis would pay for all his crimes. Elena thought that Lucas would not be punished. Without precise evidence, the investigation would stall. Adolf thought, looking at the girl's worried face, that poor sweet Elena was worried about so many things. He had to help her in this difficult time. He assured the girl that the Marquis's reputation would suffer from one interrogation by the city guard. Elena thought that Adolf was right. Once the investigation began, Lucas's reputation would be dealt a serious blow. Now that was the only thing she could be sure of. She clung to Adolf and said that she was very glad that he was there to support her. Adolf responded that he would always be there for dear Elena. Elena thought that no one would have predicted that Ariana would suddenly help her. Perhaps, having become a duchess, she simply let down her guard, but something still bothered her. It was unclear how the hell Ariana managed to seduce the unapproachable Duke, who did not give in even to Helen's charms until recently. The sister had no connection with this man. Elena doubted very much that these two truly loved each other. Most likely they had made some kind of deal, but one guess suddenly came to her mind. She remembered the score that Edward said Ariane had taken with her, the one that belonged to their grandfather. Then Elena said that she always thought that her brother said that he hated this tattered old music written by a dead man. Edward asked if she had any idea how much it might cost, since such things only became more expensive over time. Edward exclaimed that perhaps, if they wanted to, they could join the imperial family. Now Elena understood that the only thing Ariana had that was worthy of exchange was Eduardo Lopez's score, which was probably the price she paid to become the wife of Duke Habengur. But Elena could also take this place. That evening, a glowing butterfly flew into the window in the evening when Ariana was taking a bath. The butterfly came close to the girl. Butterflies always reminded Ariana of a certain piece of music. Fantastic Butterfly Trilogy. This was one of the most popular works written by Ariana's grandfather. The trilogy was widely known during his lifetime. But, unfortunately, the third final part of the work was lost after the death of the grandfather in a carriage accident. And so, 3 years later, at the Foundation Festival, Edward was going to present the third part of the Fantastic Butterfly, which everyone believed was lost forever. With this, he will be able to earn unprecedented wealth and fame. In other words, he used the notes he found while going through the things his grandfather left behind, and now he can raise his status. Ariana managed to take a couple of the scores with her when she left the mansion, but most of her grandfather's works remained hidden. Ariana thought she needed to get them back. And not just the trilogy, but everything. After getting out of the bath, Ariana wondered if the Duke had returned yet. After bathing, the girl felt different. It was as if she were a plant soaked in rose oil. Suddenly something caught the girl's attention. It was a surprise from the maid, who tried to make sure that her mistress's wedding night was perfect. These preparations angered Ariana. It was natural for couples to share a bed on their wedding night, and it wasn't that she didn't expect it. The Duke made his intentions clear that day. He said he refused to put on a show. A clumsy fake was worse than nothing at all. To be honest, Ariana doubted that anything would happen today, because only 5 years will pass. It would be an insignificant rumor that the Duke was incapable of sleeping with a woman, since he never denied all these rumors. They were most likely true. But one thought haunted Ariana. At the very least, the Duke can definitely kiss a woman, and the kiss that Ariana got was surprisingly good. "What are you thinking about so intently?" Dante's voice rang out, distracting the girl from the thoughts that had captured her. She started and exclaimed that she hadn't noticed him come in. Dante said that as soon as he entered, Ariana bowed her head. "Oh," she said, "it was because of guilt." The Duke asked why, and she replied that her sister had ruined his wedding celebration, and then it had been going through her head all day. She thought that even if her apology was just a cover, it didn't make it any less sincere. She didn't know that Elena would use the wedding for her performance and would even drag Adolf into this mess. Dante reassured her nonchalantly that it didn't matter, because that wasn't the main part of the wedding. All the most important things happen at night. Dante noted the zeal that Ariana showed at the reception. He said she now looked like a shaking rabbit about to be eaten. This aroused his interest. He wanted to know what face Ariana would make if he pressed harder. With these words, the Duke kissed the girl. She knew that this was all just a plan for her revenge. But what was happening was becoming more and more fascinating to her. Dante picked her up in his arms. Soon, Ariana found herself thrown onto the bed with the Duke hovering over her. He kissed her, and the girl did not understand why. Her heart was beating so fast from his actions. Ariana Lopez, he said. She had heard her name 1,000 times, but somehow it sounded so unfamiliar now. No, Dante corrected himself. She was now Ariana Heigenberg. He kissed her again. Ariana wondered what would happen if he heard her heartbeat. She entered into this marriage only to fulfill her revenge. But now, under the Duke's gaze, everything became too vague. I give up, Dante suddenly said. Ariana asked in surprise where he was going. The Duke replied that if he stayed, he would most likely not be able to control himself. Pride will not allow him to share a bed with a girl whose mind is so much in the clouds. Dante told Ariana to listen to him carefully and said that he knew how pleasant revenge could be. And he also knew very, very well how quickly one can become addicted to this sweet taste. Ariana thought about what she knew about Dante Heigenberg. As an illegitimate child, he won countless battles. He managed to become a duke despite the objections of his elders. There was no one more suitable for talking about revenge. She wondered what he felt that day when he crushed all his enemies and reached his own peak. Was he happy or devastated? That's what Ariana wanted to know. Ariana pulled the Duke closer to her. She wanted to know more about him. Stop, Ariana thought, surprised at what she had just said. The Duke remarked that if he had not known Ariana, he would have taken these words as an attempt to seduce him. The girl stuttered and tried to explain that it wasn't what he thought, it was just that she didn't know that much about Dante. He said with a smile that he understood that. Ariana, the Duke said, touching her face again. He said there was something she needed to understand. From that day on, she lives here with Dante Heigenberg, and later they will be able to find out who owes what to whom. It was a bright sunny morning with birds chirping loudly, and Ariana hadn't been able to close her eyes last night. Dante told her that if he stayed, he would not be able to control himself. She didn't understand what he meant by this. Perhaps he was about to say that he was unable to go further. He was probably trying to hide this awkward fact in this way. Ariana thought that now was not the time to think about such nonsense, because her revenge was not over. Ariana had a long way to go, she needed to focus, and now she had a new debt. Dante himself said that they would figure out who owes what to whom later. She remembered these words about duty. Making these people suffer for betraying her was Ariana's only goal. She wanted them to pay for everything they did to her. She never thought about what she would do after that. And now she has a new debt that needs to be paid. When this is all over, she will need to think about this now too. She couldn't even imagine what would happen to their relationship then. At this time, this is what was happening in the Pettigrew mansion. Someone was smashing dishes while cursing. Lucas Pettigrew was furious that she dared to marry another man. But at first he thought it was just a simple insult. But Ariana was serious about ending it all. But no one could have predicted that Ariana would simply find a new owner. Lucas could only swear endlessly. No, he just couldn't ignore it. After all, Ariana loved him, he knew it for sure. Maybe she will still believe him if he says that Elena forced him to drink a forbidden aphrodisiac. It won't be that difficult to fabricate evidence, you just need to bribe the doctor. Some noise behind the door caught Lucas's attention. He didn't really understand what could be going on there. They were guards. They asked how they dared to be treated here so rudely and unfriendly. The Marquise answered them that the House of Pettigrew was one of the founders of the empire. Lucas asked his mother what was wrong. He wanted to know who these people were. One of the guards announced that Marquis Lucas Pettigrew had been charged with sexual assault, and they were now here to take him in for questioning. What nonsense, Lucas said indignantly, and reminded him of his own status of immunity. The guards explained to him that they feared that his immunity was temporarily invalid, since the accusation had received support from more than 10 people. Lucas was puzzled as to who could possibly support such a ridiculous accusation against him. Unfortunately, the guards replied that they had no right to reveal the identities of these people. Lucas stated that he knew for sure that it was some kind of a bunch of nobodies. However, the number of supporters amounted to more than 35 people. This figure turned out to be unexpectedly large, which surprised Lucas. The guard said that this was why His Grace would now have to go with them. "Let me go!" Lucas shouted and repeated again. As the guards led him away, the Marquise remained lying on the floor in a deep swoon, and the maids whispered that she might not survive another blow. And so Lucas, the head of the noble house of Pettigrew, one of the founders of the empire, the elite among the elite, was locked behind the bars of a dungeon. He thought of Elena Lopez, that wicked little wretch who had dared to claim that he had forced himself on her. She will pay him for her shameless lie. This flirt will start running after him as soon as he manages to get out of here. He was going to do a lot of things, but now his thoughts about the place were interrupted by the clicking of heels. Ariana approached the bars. The girl greeted Lucas with a smile, calling him Lord Pettigrew. Lucas looked at her. He always knew that Ariana was beautiful, but he had no idea that she could be this good. If she had been smart enough to look like this before, Lucas would never have noticed Elena. "Ariana, my love," Lucas said, looking up at the girl. He asked if she had any idea how much he missed her. Now he was so glad she was here, because they really needed to talk. But Ariana only said that investigators were currently searching the Pettigrew mansion. "What?" cried Lucas. "On what grounds?" With a wide smile, Ariana replied that the reason was herself. She told the guards that she saw Lucas sexually harassing Elena in the mansion. She explained to them that they would find evidence in the garden and on the roof. Lucas did not think that there was any evidence at all of what happened to them. Suddenly he realized that the girl had mentioned the rooftop garden. He tried to understand why she had mentioned that place at all. Ariana noted that no one would really find any evidence of Lucas's infidelity there, but that didn't matter. By a strange coincidence, Ariana's testimony will lead to the discovery of something more suspicious. "You wouldn't dare," Lucas cried out in fear. But the girl replied that she had already dared. She found Lucas's secret ledger. Lucas didn't understand how Ariana could know about the secret ledger that was created to avoid paying taxes, even containing records of illegal slave purchases. Only Lucas himself, his mother, and his late father knew about the existence of these recordings. He asked how Ariana found out. The girl only smiled triumphantly at him in response. In her past life, Marquise Pettigrew forced Ariana to keep this ledger. The Marquise wondered how Ariana could support her husband if small sums eluded her, and then Ariana could only apologize for her mistakes. "But I'm afraid you didn't mention anything about the fee," she said one day, and the Marchioness asked if Ariana wanted to say that it was all her fault. The Marchioness said coldly that she had previously been worried that Ariana would not give her son an heir, but now she understood that it was for the best. Their family does not need a child as dim-witted as Ariana, who will later tarnish the Pettigrew name. The reason why the Marquise forced Ariana to keep the accounting book was mistrust. She needed someone on whom she could shift all the blame if something happened. Perhaps the day Ariana was hit by a car was not the day she died at all. Perhaps she had been dead for a long time. Ariana realized that she had been incredibly stupid. Lucas exclaimed that she was trying to defile his family with her blatant lies, but she would not get away with it. Ariana asked him if he knew that the Marquise had been turning to moneylenders a lot lately, but to Lucas it sounded like the girl was trying to insult his mother too. Ariana leaned towards him and said that he had to understand that even the wealth of the Pettigrew family was not eternal if you chose only the most expensive things for yourself and bought everything according to the latest fashion. Lucas could not believe her words. Ruin was impossible for his house. With a smile, Ariana said that he was absolutely right. His mother chose the moneylenders with the lowest interest rate. The problem, according to Ariana, was that this business was a financial backer of the League of Dawn, something the Marquise knew nothing about. The League of Dawn was the very group that was going to put the disgraced prince on the throne. If people find out that the house of one of the founders of the empire is financed by a group of traitors, it is unknown what will happen to them. Lucas simply couldn't believe it. Couldn't understand how a woman whose only talent was composing music had managed to learn not only about the existence of a secret organization, but also about the affairs of the Marquise de Pettigrew. Ariana enjoyed seeing Lucas deny everything. She was going to make his impending despair even sweeter. Lucas asked if the reasons why Ariana had changed so much were because of him. It was he who told the girl to arrange everything. Lucas was very angry with Dante Heigenberg because Lucas himself was the first to notice Ariana's talent. He was the one who saw Ariana playing the piano in the corner of the room, cowering from every glance her brother directed at her. It was Lucas who first recognized the girl's abilities. He gave her his love, and then this bastard showed up. "Love," Ariana said thoughtfully. No, what Lucas gave her was not love at all, but rather something like a piece of rotten fruit. It was very attractive on the outside, but on the inside it was nothing but rotten. With these words, Ariana left, and Lucas could only shout after her. "Ariana!" he called to her, reaching his hand through the bars. At this time in the Imperial Palace, it was discussed that this impudence was simply unimaginable. The purchase of slaves, tax evasion, all this was simply an unimaginable fall for one of the founding houses. Dante Heigenberg, the emperor, said gravely, "Yes, your majesty," he replied, thinking about the butterfly that had created a real storm. The emperor said thoughtfully that House Pettigrew was no longer what it had been, but they still had the courage to consider the empire fools. If the Duchess had not emphasized the roof in the garden, no one would have known anything. The emperor wondered if it was a coincidence. The Duke replied that he was afraid that he would not be able to comment on this in any way, because sometimes even he had difficulty predicting his actions. The emperor asked if he really knew so little about the woman he had married. Dante replied that his wife was full of surprises, which was why he was captivated by her charms. The emperor noticed that the Duke was evading the answer as always, but there was no need to try to deceive him. He saw that there was something between these two. Dante assumed that His Majesty was referring to their passionate love, and the emperor exclaimed that talking to him was like talking to a wall. It's been 10 years since House Heigenberg sent Dante to fight in the war against the savages. Wanting to get rid of their problematic offspring, they signed his death warrant. However, Dante returned a hero. He was too capable to leave things as they were. The emperor asked if Dante had ever thought about divorcing Ariana and marrying the princess, but the Duke merely asked if His Majesty was becoming insane. The emperor explained that the crown prince was diligent but too stupid, and that this empire needed a strong leader. Dante replied that he would simply pretend that he had not heard anything that His Majesty had just said, and the emperor asked if he would at least pretend to think about it. The Duke assured that he and his wife had already fulfilled their marital duty, and now he would not be able to call himself a man if he was not faithful to her. The emperor noticed that Dante knew how to keep a woman, but there were rumors that the Duke had certain problems. Dante said he wanted to know who was spreading such rumors about him. This conversation was interrupted by one of the imperial courtiers when he entered the hall. The courtier informed the emperor that new information had emerged regarding the investigation. They received an anonymous tip that the group from which Marquise Pettigrew borrowed money was connected to the League of Dawn. The situation was becoming increasingly absurd. The house of the founder of the empire was financed by a group of traitors. Meanwhile, the Duke's carriage drove up to the gate. Ariana was in it, thinking that the investigators had probably already discovered everything. Since she sent a letter detailing where the money had disappeared, there was bound to be some turmoil for a while. The coachman informed her ladyship that they had arrived. The carriage door swung open. It was the Duke, looking at Ariana, who noticed that his butterfly seemed to like to fly where it shouldn't. He said that since they were married, she did not have to address him formally and call him Duke or Grace, and she should not see her ex-fiancé anymore. Ariana explained that she simply wanted to personally say that the family Lucas was so proud of would now be famous for debt. But the Duke asked if that anonymous letter was her doing. He noticed that he had a strange feeling that he couldn't get rid of, as if Ariana was always hiding something from him. Ariana said that his lordship was right. She was one of those who sent the anonymous letters. She knew that if the Marquise's illegal personal loans became known, the reputation of the Pettigrew family would be seriously damaged. The Duke asked if this meant that Ariana did not expect this to lead to the takeover of the League of Dawn. Ariana pretended that she had never heard of that name. The Duke replied that thanks to her letter, they discovered that the Froken pawnshop was secretly financing the League. Ariana assured that she knew nothing about it. She had no intention of telling the Duke that she had any idea about the existence of the League of Dawn. Ariana learned of the collaboration between Froken's pawnshop and the League of Dawn a few days before her death, so now it was better for her to just keep quiet. The Duke told her that a matter of such importance had led to a thorough search, and Ariana pretended to sigh that Lucas was terribly unlucky to think that such a noble house as Pettigrew had fallen so low. The Duke replied that it would have sounded more convincing if Ariana's eyes had not smiled so clearly when she said these words, and the girl replied that it seemed that she needed practice in the art of controlling her emotions. The Duke leaned closer to the girl and said that she could be truly charming at times. Then he said that he would ask the coachman to turn the carriage around because they needed to go to the palace. When Ariana asked why, Dante replied with a mysterious smile that His Majesty wished to see the girl who had become Duchess of Heigenberg. Ariana had no idea what His Majesty might want from her. The girl curtsied respectfully to greet the Emperor. The Emperor noticed that it must be Ariana in front of him. She really did look noticeably different from his daughter. The Emperor asked if these were the kind of women Duke Heigenberg liked, which confused Ariana. The Duke asked His Majesty to refrain from making such comments about his wife, to which the Emperor remarked that the Duke was being excessively talkative today. The Emperor turned to Ariana again, saying that since her information had led to the capture of conspirators who wanted to harm the Empire, the girl needed to be rewarded. He asked if Ariana had any wish that he could fulfill. Ariana thought about what reward she could receive personally from the Emperor. She plucked up the courage to address His Majesty. Ariana said that she would be honored to be allowed to perform at the Foundation Festival. The Emperor thought about it seriously. Of course, he could remember how Eduardo Lopez, the unrivaled virtuoso, visited the palace arm in arm with his granddaughter. The girl was still very little, but the musician brought her with him onto the stage. The little girl turned out to have a wonderful nightingale voice. It looks like she has now grown into a beautiful young lady. Ariana remembered those happy times well. That's exactly how everything had been. The Emperor said that since Ariana had already proven her talent that day, she could now sing as much as she wanted. This surprised the girl, because she had not said that she was going to sing herself, but after thinking about it, she understood why the Emperor had decided so, because usually women do not write music or direct scenes. Ariana said that she was very grateful that His Majesty was willing to grant her request, but the performance she was asking for did not involve her singing on stage. Her desire was to perform as a composer. The Emperor did not expect these words from the girl. This was also worth thinking about carefully. Ariana decided that perhaps she was asking too much. No woman had ever debuted at the Foundation Festival. Suddenly there was a clapping sound, and the Duke, loudly applauding, announced that the Emperor had just earned 5 billion kaden. The Emperor did not understand what the Duke meant, and Dante explained that this was the amount he intended to pay after hearing the song that Ariana had written. Since the girl intended to perform her masterpiece at the festival for free, the Emperor could actually become richer by 5 billion kaden. The Emperor was sure that the Duke was simply exaggerating, since he could not seriously try to pay 5 billion for just one song. The Duke replied that the value of a good song never diminishes, no matter how many times it is sold, and that its value only increases over time as a song becomes more popular and more expensive. Dante was convinced that the true value of art goes far beyond the work itself, and hearing his words, Ariana thought that this is exactly what she had always believed herself. The Duke added that he had not yet mentioned that His Majesty could take advantage of the chance to finally topple the kingdom of Ende from their pedestal. "These unfortunate Ende," the Emperor muttered. They didn't even bother trying to hide their mocking grins. He remembered the words about the lack of aristocracy, which he did not fully understand. Dante noticed that all this was not like what it was during the life of the great virtuoso. The Emperor exclaimed that, of course, all this was not so. It had been completely different before. Even the scoundrels of Ende could not help but be impressed by the music of Eduardo Lopez. Royalty from all over the world came and personally begged him to perform in their country. Dante recalled that, by an incredible stroke of luck, the granddaughter of this virtuoso was now standing here before His Majesty. His Majesty's gaze flashed as he turned to Ariana. The Emperor asked if he would allow the girl to perform at the Foundation Festival, if she could promise him that she would bring this vile kingdom of Ende to its knees. "I swear," Ariana said decisively, and promised to put her heart and soul into bringing glory to the Empire. The Emperor liked her answer and suggested that since Duke Heigenberg was so confident in his wife's talent, there were no restrictions on allowing her to perform. "She will be the last of all to perform at the festival." Ariana thanked His Majesty and assured him that she would not let him down. She thought that Dante had helped her. He had made the Emperor see in her not a woman without a musical education. He emphasized that Ariana was the one who inherited the talent of the outstanding composer. If it weren't for his help, it's unlikely that everything would have gone so smoothly. Dante caught Ariana's gaze and, leaning towards the girl, whispered that he would ask his lady to save such a passionate look for those times when they were alone. Ah, ardent young love. The emperor was touched, looking at the blushing Ariana. At this time, a completely different scene was unfolding in the Lopez mansion. Enraged, Edward smashed everything around him, not understanding why he was still paying for the refund, because he had long ago fired all these useless servants who were sucking out his money, and now it was unclear where the new expenses were coming from. He decided that it was all because of the impudent boy who stole his orchestra. If it weren't for him and Ariana, Edward would have already prepared a masterpiece for the Foundation Festival, sitting on a pile of money. The butler who entered informed the owner that a guest had come to see him, but Edward had ordered everyone to tell him that he was not in the mansion. But this guest was noticeably different from the others. The thing was that this guest intended to invest in Edward. Edward simply couldn't believe what was happening. Of course, he met with this man immediately. He asked how exactly the guest found out about him. The stranger explained that he had been following Edward since his days at the Royal Ende Academy of Arts. He said he always believed Edward would grow up to be a great composer, but he was left in disarray by the rumors of the recent scandal in the Lopez family. Perhaps it was within his power to help this house, but Edward just didn't understand how. The stranger knew that Edward owed a significant amount to the Imperial Bank, and he asked permission to cover this debt. In addition, he could provide support by performing at the upcoming Foundation Festival. He expressed confidence that such a talented person as Edward would be noticeable even at such a prestigious event for Edward. This was a great chance, because performing at the Foundation Festival was the dream of any artist. The guest said that a small demonstration of talent and success in the creative field would be guaranteed for Edward. However, since the stranger was offering Edward a colossal amount of money, the stakes were incredibly high. He feared that this was the only way to get the right to perform at the festival, and Edward was grateful for it. The guest expressed confidence that the esteemed guests would be sophisticated enough to recognize the artist's worth. Edward agreed with this because, in his opinion, the only reason that had so far prevented him from spreading his wings was the ignorant fools surrounding him. And when he finally got his chance to be in the spotlight, that mean girl Ariana ruined everything, but it seems that luck never deserts true talent. Edward noticed that he and the guest had not introduced themselves to each other. He asked his name. The guest smiled, shook his interlocutor's hand, and said that his name was Leonard. In the morning, at the Duke's residence, Ariana heard the maid calling her. The maid burst into her ladyship's chambers with a fresh newspaper to ask if Ariana had read it. Ariana looked at Sophie with a very sad look. The maid realized that her ladyship had been up all night again, writing, and she had repeatedly reproached her that it would be bad for her health, but Ariana had objected that she was fine. The newspaper headline read that Edward Lopez's crimes had been exposed. Sophie asked if the lady knew that the servants of the Lopez estate had been thrown out without receiving a penny. Ariana replied that it seemed that the newspapers were receiving more and more varied stories from people who had suffered at the hands of her brother. Ariana asked Sophie why she hadn't left yet. Ariana wanted Sophie to leave the Lopez estate and become her personal servant from that day on. Sophie happily asked if the lady really wanted this, because she herself, of course, would only be glad. Ariana expressed regret that she couldn't take the maid earlier, but Sophie said that there was no need to worry about it. Ariana asked Sophie if she wanted to listen to the melody she had composed, which took her all night to do. Ariana sat down at the instrument and began to play. Sophie stood frozen next to him, feeling how wonderful it was. When she finished, Ariana asked which of the two melodies the first listener liked better. Sophie replied that the first was exquisite, but the second was simply magnificent. The truth was that she could not choose which of the two was better. Ariana said thoughtfully that this meant that both melodies were mediocre. She explained to the puzzled maid that if both were beautiful, it could mean that both were unremarkable. Sophie cried out that she hadn't meant that at all. She really just liked them both. She couldn't express her feelings in any way, and she wished more than ever for a richer vocabulary. Ariana muttered that just sounding pretty wasn't enough. Her work must be so powerful that people immediately understand that this is it. The composition must melt the hearts of listeners with its fire. This is exactly the kind of music that Grandpa would have written, but Ariana couldn't achieve the ideal. Sophie was the first to notice what was happening outside the window. She informed her mistress that it was the merchant's carriage that had arrived, and she assumed that his lordship wished to purchase more dresses and jewels for his wife. Ariana thought sadly about how long it would take to try on dresses, with such a short time left before the foundation festival. The butler informed her that Duke Heigenberg had called the tool merchants for her grace, so she should go out to them for a minute. Ariana suddenly realized that he was talking about the instrument merchants. The butler explained that he had asked them to arrange the goods in the music room and clarified what had been done wrong. Ariana beamed and said she was going down there immediately. Picking up her skirts, she quickly ran down the stairs. She couldn't believe there were tool merchants here. With her heart beating fast, the girl opened the door to the music room. The piano, violins, and cello were placed there on special stands. Ariana had the feeling that all the instruments of the world were collected here. In her past life, Ariana believed that one piano was enough to write music. Lucas told her that she should be grateful that she could compose her own music on this quality instrument that he had found for her. The truth was that Ariana really wanted to believe him, to be grateful to him for his care and love. She concentrated so much on the piano because it was the only instrument she was allowed to play freely. As for the rest, she could only imagine how they sounded. Now all this magnificence available to her appeared before the girl. There was a harp here, the unique sound of which made it my grandfather's favorite instrument. The harp was the first thing Ariana's father sold after her grandfather died. She thought she had forgotten how to play it, but it seemed like the body remembered everything. "I'm impressed," a voice suddenly said behind Ariana. Dante entered the room unnoticed, and now said that he had never suspected that his young wife also owned this instrument. Ariana thought that he had purchased such an expensive instrument, not even knowing if Ariana could play it. She explained that she was not a professional, but her grandfather taught her to play most of the instruments. The Duke noticed that she was indeed talented in many ways. Coming closer, Dante added that this was exactly what was expected from his wife. Looking into the girl's eyes, the Duke asked what else she was capable of. He suggested that maybe she could also sing. Ariana's heart was beating wildly in her chest. She didn't understand why he suddenly asked her about this. Was it because of what His Majesty said that day? The Emperor said that it seemed that the little girl with the nightingale's voice had turned into a beautiful young lady. Ariana wasn't at all sure she could do it, because she hadn't sung a single bar since that day. She clenched her fists and said she would try. If you look at it as compensation for the expensive tools, the price seemed quite low. But when Ariana tried to sing, she felt a tremor. Her breath caught and she couldn't take another breath. Dante rushed to the girl to support her. He said she was shaking like a leaf and then asked if she was okay. The Duke said that she didn't have to sing if she didn't want to. Dante told her to never force herself to do anything she didn't want to do. Ariana explained that it wasn't because she didn't like singing. She used to enjoy it, and Dante said he knew it. Ariana didn't understand what he was talking about, and the Duke asked her to tell him what was wrong. And the girl decided to tell him about her debut ball when she was 15. On the day of her performance, for some reason, everything went wrong. The audience said that her singing would undoubtedly be great. She is the only granddaughter of Eduardo Lopez. People just couldn't wait for the show to start. The song was ridiculously high from the start, and the sound was such that it could be heard far around. Nevertheless, Ariana still managed to sing. And then suddenly she felt her throat tighten and she couldn't breathe. Ariana fell to the floor clutching her neck, and spectators began talking about her illness, worrying that it might be contagious. Ariana has always had a terrible allergy to oysters, and that day she had symptoms as if she had eaten a whole bucket of them. They angrily asked her what she had eaten the day before, scolded her for daring to bring herself to such a state, reproached her for not even imagining how disgusting it all looked. Edward screamed that all she had to do was perform properly, but she couldn't even do that. She had tarnished their family's musical legacy. According to her brother, Ariana made their family a laughing stock for the first time. Ariana later realized that Elena had given her a glass of fruit juice just before she went on stage. Now Ariana thought that her sister had put something in her glass. Dante said that the more he hears about her family, the more he hates them all. Ariana thought the Duke was angry because of her. No one had ever done this for her before, and now her heart was acting strange. The girl apologized for complaining about her problems. She understood that all this had happened a long time ago, and she wanted to assure him that this would not happen again, but tears did not allow her to finish. Dante pulled her close and asked her to save her hardness for other people, because it didn't work on him. He asked her not to cry anymore. He won't ask her to sing anymore if she doesn't want to. They didn't have to pretend to be a couple in love now, because no one could see them, there was no one around. And yet he continued to kiss her very tenderly. That night, already in her bed, Ariana tried in vain to force herself to pull herself together. She shouldn't have reacted to the Duke like that. She needed to concentrate on her work. Besides, the Duke had probably done similar things countless times. That's probably why he was so good. Ariana couldn't stop thinking about those kisses. Dante himself stopped and moved away from the girl. He said he was trying to hold back until she remembered, but her amnesia was upsetting him. It was starting to feel like torture. Ariana didn't know that a man with such an affliction could actually react like that. There was a lot that was unclear about this situation, and yet it was time for Ariana to sleep. She dreamed of that terrible night in which she heard a voice calling her, but she ran through the darkness with the last of her strength, and her terrifying pursuer was not far behind her. Ariana managed to scream before she stumbled. She fell into the water with a splash and began to sink into the depths. Someone was nearby, someone grabbed her. Up, she heard a determined voice very close by. Wake up, her voice called out to her again. That creepy forest, the second time the girl saw this dream. It wasn't just a nightmare. Perhaps it had something to do with those lost memories that his lordship was reminding him of. Ariana couldn't get the image of that forest out of her head. Here it is, she suddenly thought. She thought she had found the answer. Now she knew that people would only remember the music that stirred their feelings as soon as they heard it. Likewise, scary stories disturb sleep much more than beautiful fairy tales, and nightmares remain in the mind much longer than happy dreams. The chilling, magical forest of nightmares will remain in your memory for much longer. Soon all the talk was about Count Lopez throwing a ball. After all, it was he who had recently fired his servants because he had gone bankrupt, but they said that he had paid off his debt in one payment, so the whole society had gathered at his ball to check whether this was really the case. One young man suggested that everyone was there because of a special gift. Nobody knew what special gift was being discussed. "Oh, wow!" exclaimed the young man, receiving the program in his hands. There were excerpts from a song written by the late Count Eduardo Lopez himself. The guests were amazed that such a treasure was being given into their hands. They had different melodies in the programs with different titles. It looked very interesting. Edward tapped his glass with a spoon, attracting everyone's attention. He said he could see that the guests enjoyed the surprise. It had been almost 10 years since his grandfather's death, and for him these gifts were an opportunity to share with others the memory of an exceptional talent. Some might say that Edward was frivolously throwing away precious legacies, but he himself did not think so. If he keeps it to himself, then only the Lopez family will mourn their grandfather. But if he shares this music, then the memory of him will live on in the hearts of other people. That's why Edward announced that he was going to perform the third part of the Butterfly Fantastic Trilogy at the upcoming Foundation Festival. Viewers couldn't believe what they were hearing about the Fantastic Butterfly Trilogy, the last masterpiece created by the great virtuoso. It turns out that he was actually working on the third part before his death. Edward said that since Eduardo Lopez, unfortunately, did not manage to finish the composition before his death, he completed it himself. Although he was no match for his grandfather, he hoped that the guests would like it. To improve the Lopez family's reputation, Edward had to be the center of attention at the festival. At this moment, the arrival of the Duchess of Heigenberg was announced. Elena rushed towards Ariana with a joyful exclamation. She exclaimed that she was very glad that she had come, and gratefully embraced her in a tight embrace. Ariana responded awkwardly to the gesture. The guests began to whisper that the sisters seemed to be friends, which meant that what Elena was saying about Lucas Pettigrew was true. Elena thought that it seemed that she had not played the role of the victim in vain. Since Ariana came here, it means she believed too. Looking around, Elena asked where his lordship was, but Ariana replied that she had come alone. Elena thought so. He had long been tired of Ariana like that, but she asked out loud why her sister came alone, when it would have been better to come with her husband. After all, this was Ariana's first public appearance as Duchess of Heigenberg. Ariana knew that Elena would say that. She replied that she was just visiting her family. It was hardly worth calling it going out into high society. Elena agreed that she might be right, and Ariana noticed the tiara she was wearing. Ariana noticed that the tiara belonged to her. She said she was glad her sister was wearing it. Elena always liked to use her things, as well as men. Elena's face flushed with anger and shame. Edward ran up to his sister screaming. He couldn't believe that this thief dared to appear here again. The guests began to whisper even louder. Edward declared that Ariana's appearance was an incredible surprise for him because he did not even send her an invitation, believing that she would be too busy, and Ariana replied that she would always find time for protection. And she intended to protect her grandfather's works because she did not understand how Edward had even thought of getting rid of his music in such a way. Edward fiercely protested that he was in charge of the Lopez family property and that Ariana was no longer a Lopez and had no right to interfere. Ariana said that then Edward should give her a gift too, like everyone else. Even though she is no longer Lopez, she is still one of the guests. Edward ordered the program to be given to the Duchess. The butler handed a piece of music to Ariana. Ariana unfolded it and looked at what was written. Elena noticed with a laugh that there was even some kind of drawing on this piece of paper, and Ariana said that it was her. On the edge of the sheet of music was a drawing of a girl with the same pigtails that Ariana once wore. The guests understood from this conversation that it seems the Duchess was close to the late Count Eduardo. It was also sad they felt very sorry for the Duchess. One guest approached Ariana and said that the piece she had received also depicted a girl with pigtails, and Ariana confirmed that it was her. The guest handed the piece of paper to Ariana and asked permission to return it to her. If she had known how important it was to her, she would never have taken it. Other guests also began to give Ariana their musical fragments, and the girl apologized to them because she did not want them to feel guilty at all. No one understood why Count Lopez had given this to the guests at all because of him. They had upset Her Grace hearing this. Edward thought that Ariana had remained a petty and vile snake. He approached his sister and asked if he could talk to her. They walked out into the spare room, and after the door slammed shut, Edward screamed that he didn't understand what the hell Ariana was doing. Ariana said that she should ask him about how he could hand out her grandfather's work in pieces like cheap leaflets. She asked if Edward had hidden the Butterfly Fantastic Trilogy. It looked like Ariana was really angry. Edward had never seen her so emotional before. It seemed like he had managed to touch her on the raw. Edward stated that he had not hidden anything anywhere. He was the owner of this house. All the property belonged to him. Ariana assumed he meant that he also had that same score. Edward didn't understand what score she was talking about. Ariana screamed at him to stop pretending, as he knew full well that the Butterfly Fantastic Trilogy was not his final work. Ariana spoke of his real final masterpiece, the score he was working on just before his death. Edward thought about it. He didn't know anything about his grandfather's last real masterpiece. This is what Ariana was looking for. This old nasty man always favored her more than anyone else, and now it turns out he even dedicated a song to her. He could pretend to have the score and then find out more so he could search the house properly. "Ah," he said, "this is the score we were talking about," and then he assured me that naturally he had it. Ariana screamed that it was hers. So Edward had to give it to her because her grandfather wrote it based on the first melody she created. It was her music. If they don't give it to her, she will find it herself. "Step back!" Ariana screamed. She had intended to personally inspect the safe in the office, but Edward had declared that there was nothing there. Ariana tried to push him away and shouted that she would inspect everything herself, both the safe and the secret compartment inside it. Edward learned with some curiosity that there was such a compartment inside the safe. Ariana recognized that look from him. He always looked like that when he stole her music. It was the look of a greedy thief. But this time greed will be his undoing. At this time, the guests saw Duke Heigenberg crossing the festive hall with a determined step. Dante stated that he had heard that his wife was somewhere here. He wanted someone to tell him where to look for her now. Everyone started whispering about where the Duchess had gone. Hadn't she gone to talk to the Count? The Viscount suggested looking for her. Elena couldn't believe that the Duke was here because of Ariana. The Viscount rushed to the Duke, assuring him that it was an honor for him to see his lordship again. But the Duke cut short his fiery speech, replying that, unfortunately, he was not in the mood for exchanging pleasantries. Because several hours had passed since he last saw his wife, The guests began to whisper that everyone had said that the Duke was cold towards his wife. It seemed that these rumors were false. "So," said the Duke, and his heavy hand fell on the Viscount's shoulder. He wanted to know where his wife was, and the Viscount replied that the Duchess had gone out to speak with Count Lopez in private. Dante repeated this very sternly, causing fear in his interlocutor. At this moment, the butler approached his lordship and offered to take him to the Duchess. Edward and Ariana heard a sharp knock on the door, and Edward shouted that they were not finished talking yet. This did not stop the one who tried to break into them at all. Duke Heigenberg appeared at the door and asked if this was his pathetic brother-in-law. Ariana looked into the Duke's eyes with fear. His gaze frightened her. The Duke grabbed Edward and screamed that he dared to make his wife cry. Edward thought the Duke hated his wife. Wasn't that why he locked her in his house? But his behavior was definitely not what Edward expected. Dante growled that from now on he advised Edward to be more careful with his remarks towards Ariana. His wife might be magnanimous enough to let her brother get away with a minor offense, but the Duke himself was not. "Yes," Edward muttered in horror. As the Duke and Duchess walked together through the hall, Ariana asked him what brought his lordship there, and Dante replied that her words broke his heart. His hand went to Ariana's waist and pulled her towards him. Dante said that she simply left him no choice but to come here himself. Ariana heard everyone discussing the love with which the Duke looked at his wife. Even the spectators blushed. Ariana noted that she was going to return before dark. "Of course," Dante said with a smile and reminded that Ariana would play for him again today. They arrived at the mansion. The butler greeted the Duke and Duchess of Heigenberg. The maid asked if she should prepare a bath for the lady. Ariana thanked her and said she was going to head straight to the music room. Sophie said that for some reason she thought so. And then the maid saw that the Duke would go with Ariana. All the servants of the mansion gathered to watch this scene. In the music room, Ariana immediately sat down at the piano, and Dante settled down on the sofa. When the girl asked if he was going to sit like that all the time, the Duke said that he would. Ariana reminded him that she had already told him that she couldn't concentrate at all in his presence. "Liar," Dante said, noting that once Ariana started playing, she would forget he even existed. She thought, here he is, getting out of it again. She had to concentrate. She had to ignore him. There was so much she needed to do. Ariana had been working on this song for the past month, but there was a part she wasn't happy with. This is a scene in which the main character, a little girl, is immersed in the festive atmosphere. The passage should sound fun and elegant, but at the same time a little strange and creepy. Still, feeling delight and all-consuming excitement for the first time in my life was a special moment. Dante looked at her questioningly. He came closer to her and asked what problems had arisen. Ariana replied that she was unable to convey the necessary emotion. They say that deep happiness and sadness can be one and the same, and that is what she wanted to convey. Dante asked if she wanted to know how to feel so good that you wanted to cry, and Ariana thought that was different from what she had just said. Dante leaned towards her and said that he would teach her everything if she only wanted it. He would do everything in his power to help her. Ariana was upset that she was completely helpless in front of him when he teased her. She asked if he was really familiar with these emotions. Dante replied that he certainly did more than she did. Besides, he was older. She asked him to teach her if he could do it. Ariana whispered that she wished she knew what it was like to feel such emotions. Her heart beat wildly as Dante leaned closer to her. The next moment, the Duke kissed the girl. At the Lopez house, Edward also had something to think about. Mr. Leonard, who came to him again, assumed that the Count must be irritated. He heard that Edward was going to present the Butterfly Fantasy Trilogy at the festival. Edward said that of course it would be a premiere. It would definitely be a success. Mr. Leonard had nothing to worry about. "What a pity," said Mr. Leonard, and Edward did not understand what he wanted to say. Mr. Leonard said he had hoped Edward would perform his own piece. Edward himself would like to. He racked his brains over this for 3 days. But for a creator with a sensitive soul, there is nothing worse than tight deadlines. Edward said he was sure the festival guests would enjoy it, but Mr. Leonard said he was sorry. But if Edward intended to perform this particular piece, then he withdraws his patronage. Mr. Leonard explained this by saying that he was going to support Edward, and not the old man who was already resting in the grave. He asked for all the money he had lent him to be returned before the previously agreed deadline, and then turned around to leave. Edward tried to hold him back and grabbed his elbow. He said that he would then perform his piece. After this conversation, Edward loudly slammed the door to his office. He rushed around it, thinking about Ariana's words. If we are to believe her words, there was another hiding place behind the safe. In despair, he sat on his knees in front of the safe, unable to solve this problem, and was found there by the butler, who asked what the gentleman was doing. Edward turned around abruptly. He assumed that the butler knew all about the existence of the hiding place since he was so calm. He shouted that no one dared to hide anything from him, from the head of the house, and with these words he hit him. The butler replied that all that was there were Mr. Eduardo's personal belongings, and that they did not represent any particular value. "Open the safe or you're dead," Edward said harshly, adding that the butler should choose wisely, because he wouldn't let him die quickly. The butler said that he would open this hiding place for the master. Edward noted that this was a good decision and ordered that it be carried out quickly. The butler pressed the secret parts on the safe door. The mechanism worked and the hiding place opened with a click. "Out of the way!" Edward growled, rushing towards the hiding place. There really were notes there, the last masterpiece of the great virtuoso. Edward's heart began to beat wildly. Maybe this thing was even more valuable than the Butterfly Fantasy trilogy. At this time, in the mansion of Duke Heigenberg, Dante sat by the window in his office and thought about Ariana. She just needed to find inspiration, to feel something she had never experienced before. It was so rash that at that moment Mr. Leo knocked on the door and the Duke allowed him to enter. He entered and reported that he had just completed the work assigned to him by his lordship. As expected, as soon as he said that he would only finance his own work, Edward immediately changed his mind and declared that he would perform his own work at the festival. Leonard said that Edward looked very confident. Leo was truly surprised by Lady Ariana's ingenuity. The Duchess flawlessly predicts the enemy's moves. He was also impressed by the determination with which she implements her plans. He assumed that she could become an excellent military strategist. Dante gloomily told his assistant not to waste his time on such nonsense and asked if that was all he wanted to say. Leo reminded them of the League of Dawn members they had been pursuing, the ones who had escaped after their connection to the Froken pawn shop had been exposed, and they had managed to capture one of them alive this morning. Only he said something rather strange. He said that a group of mercenaries was indeed sent to the Farge forest that night, but he was not among them. Leonard said the Duchess had no reason to take revenge on him, and that was strange. It was in the Farge forest that Ariana's grandfather and mother died in an accident. The League of Dawn traveled to Farge to carry out an assassination attempt, which they thought would cause Ariana to seek revenge on them. It turned out that they were killed. It was definitely someone's order. Leo asked if Lady Ariana should be told about this, but the Duke replied that not yet. He also ordered that everyone be warned not to dare touch him, but Leo objected that they had found out almost nothing. The Duke replied that from now on he would interrogate the man himself. The day has arrived for the Foundation Festival to begin. The stream of carriages seemed simply endless, and this was completely understandable, because the Foundation Festival was the pride of the Empire. The people of the Enda Kingdom looked so unusual, one could assume that next year the same outfits would become a hit among the residents of the capital. A young man emerged from one of the carriages who was immediately recognized as the eldest prince of the Kingdom of Ende. Many had heard that he was well versed in art, but few knew that he was so handsome. Suddenly, everyone's attention was drawn to a strange carriage. This carriage also stopped among other guest carriages. Someone identified the delegation from the Kingdom of Kalka. No one expected them to be represented at the Foundation Festival, as they were rather reserved, but it could be assumed that they had been invited by Duke Heigenberg. Many had heard that he had made an alliance with them. The Kalkans were said to keep snakes as pets and to drink wine from the skulls of the barbarians they killed, all of which sounded quite nightmarish. The delegation was led by Toman, the commander-in-chief of the Kalka Kingdom. He had an exotic and wild appearance. He noticed Duke Heigenberg and turned to him. He greeted the Duke with a bow, and Dante politely replied that he was glad to meet him and hoped that Toman had arrived without incident. Toman wanted to know who the lady next to the Duke was. Dante introduced Ariana as his wife and Duchess of Heigenberg. "Nice to meet you, my name is Ariana," the girl said, looking at her new acquaintance. She said she hoped the guests would have a good time in the Empire. Toman knelt down and asked the lady to do him the honor of allowing him to dedicate the Oath of the Desert to her. The suddenly enraged Duke demanded that Toman stop talking nonsense and get up from the ground before he was hit. Toman smiled broadly at these harsh words. He apologized for scaring her. And then he explained that the Kalkans dedicate the oath of the desert to the most wonderful person they meet in their lives. And since Ariana was the wife of Duke Heigenberg, the savior of his people, Toman would be extremely happy if she accepted this oath. "The hell she'll do it!" the Duke growled, shielding Ariana with his body. Ariana was scared because this was a representative of another country, and because of this situation, rumors could spread that the Duke was acting arrogantly. Ariana intervened and said that she had heard that Kalka was incredibly beautiful. There were also rumors about Toman's valor on the battlefield, and that the Kalkans value their honor and do not tolerate rude treatment, especially when it comes to the desire to possess something that belongs to someone else. With a bow, Toman confirmed that Ariana was absolutely right. Toman smiled and said that they, the Kalkans, always favor those who know the value of respect. He hoped that when Ariana visited Kalka one day, she would see this. Only Dante declared that this would never happen, and he was able to ensure the safety of his wife without any oaths. "Come on, Ariana," he said, placing his hand on her shoulder and then pulling her away. Ariana asked Dante if they could just leave the man there, since he was only polite to her because she was the Duke's wife, but Dante replied that there was no need to worry. It wasn't about politeness. This man just thought Ariana was very beautiful. Many people don't know this, but Kalkanians are simply crazy about people with beautiful appearance. Ariana asked if Dante thought she was beautiful. "What?" Dante asked again in such a tone that Ariana regretted asking it at all. She herself did not really understand what prompted her to ask such a question. Now she felt only awkwardness. The Duke grabbed her and pulled her towards him. He asked her to never make that face when they were in public. After all, it was simply driving him crazy. He was barely holding back as it was. Ariana remembered those kisses and everything that happened between them. Perhaps I shouldn't have asked him such things. "Sir," a voice suddenly reached them. The assistant said that the Duke needed to appear in the interrogation room. Dante turned to Ariana. She said that everything was fine. She would talk to the other guests while he was gone. Dante said that if anyone said anything stupid to her, she should just teach him a lesson. She could safely use the power and status of the Duke as she wished. With these words, the Duke departed, leaving Ariana in some confusion. "Hello, Ariana," she suddenly heard. "I was looking for you?" said Elena, who had come up to her dressed luxuriously. Ariana noted that Elena looked good. The trading company must be making good profits. Elena said that when the ship returned, she and Edward would be much richer than they were before. Ariana should have listened to Adolf's words as she did. Elena noted that she had heard that His Majesty had commissioned Ariana to perform at the Foundation Festival at the closing ceremony. "That's right," Ariana confirmed. Elena leaned closer to her and wished her luck, although she expressed doubts that Ariana would be able to achieve anything with traders and one village oaf as her assistants. Elena said that she just didn't want her sister to overexert herself, since their next performance would eclipse the previous one anyway. Ariana advised Elena with a smile not to be so arrogant. What did Elena ask again, frowning? Ariana asked her sister if she really thought she had discovered all the evidence of Elena's connection with Lucas. Elena didn't understand what she was talking about because it seemed to her that there was no more evidence. Ariana smiled and said that she even knew that Elena had taken drugs to induce pregnancy. "What nonsense!" Elena cried out in rage. But she quickly pulled herself together and looked around, and then asked why Ariana was saying such things. Ariana replied that sooner or later Elena would find out about it. She said goodbye to her and said that they would see each other again. She was going to enjoy the show from the front row. At this time, the Duke entered that very room. "Look who has finally arrived," the Emperor told him. Dante asked if this was really the leader of the League of Dawn. They told him that he had been one for 10 years already. The Emperor said that it seemed like all the murder cases revolved around him, so there was a possibility that he had a hand in that incident as well. Dante asked if this was the man who had harmed his wife. The Duke's tone made the criminal flinch. Dante remarked that perhaps the others should leave the room. He feared that what he was about to do was not a pleasant sight. The Emperor decided to follow this advice and rose from his chair. He said that he believed that Duke Heigenberg would succeed and asked to be sure to report when everything was over. The second person present, the Crown Prince, said that he was going to stay because this man was not a petty criminal, but a traitor to the empire. At least one member of the imperial family should be present at the interrogation. "As you wish," said Dante. The prince looked angrily at the duke's back. He thought that he was too impudent for an illegitimate child because he was his father's favorite. He was alien to the due respect that the heir to the empire deserved. Dante took a few more steps towards the criminal. He tore off the bandage that prevented him from speaking. The criminal exclaimed that they should just kill him because he had nothing to tell them. Dante replied that another member of the League of Dawn had already confessed to the murder last night. He said it was about 10 years ago. The League was hired to remove Count Lopez, but the man swore he had nothing to do with it. He convinced the Duke to believe him. Dante demanded to know who hired him to kill Eduardo Lopez. A sharp blade was found at the criminal's throat. "Go ahead, kill me," the man shouted. He still wasn't going to say a single word to a butcher like the Duke, someone who had voluntarily gone out into the field to kill people. The Duke used the weapon he held in his hand. He said it was true, he really did kill many, that's why they called him the Butcher. This meant that he knew exactly where to hit to make a person talk. Then he asked again who wanted Eduardo Lopez dead. Dante thought the man had a strange look in his eyes, as if there was something he feared more than torture and death. He moved the blade again in the wound inflicted on the criminal. "I'll tell you," the criminal shouted. The pain made him speak. He even started to pronounce the right name, but did not have time. Something distracted the Duke for a moment. Dante turned around quickly. The throwing star flew into the criminal's throat, cutting off his words and his life. He coughed up blood. The Duke looked at the door opposite. Dante could only confirm that the man was dead. The prince began to call the guards, shouting that there was an intruder here. He wanted to know who dared to let an intruder into the imperial palace, but the criminal almost told them the name of the customer.